diskriminiert ist, da diskutiere ich nicht drüber. So, obwohl es ja wichtig ist, darüber zu diskutieren, einfach und seine Punkte auszutauschen. So, und das ist zum Beispiel eine Sache, die ich bei Shoyoka halt sehr, sehr schade finde, weil es ist ja super, dass sie sich dafür einsetzt und so, das ist sehr gut. So, ne, Real Talk, also finde ich klasse, dass sie das macht. Aber wie sie das halt macht, finde ich halt fraglich so. Und dann halt nicht mal solche Diskussionen zuzulassen, ist halt schwierig. Ich meine, dass man nicht darüber diskutieren muss, ob Transsexuelle existieren, sage ich jetzt einfach mal, ist klar, weil sollen sie, darüber braucht man auch nicht reden und das wäre eine Diskussion, die halt nichts bringt. Aber über Dinge zu diskutieren, wie schlimm ist zum Beispiel Hogwarts Legacy oder wie schlimm ist J.K. Rowling, das sind ja Punkte, wo es halt wichtig wäre, eine Diskussion zu führen. Und da zeigt sich halt so ein bisschen, dass sie halt dann eher so in ihrer Ja-Sager-Bubble halt unterwegs sein möchte. Ne?
Nochmal anders, aber in der Öffentlichkeit bin ich einfach davon überzeugt, wenn wir mit diskriminierenden Menschen in der Öffentlichkeit diskutieren und die populistisch agieren und argumentieren, dann verlierst du halt immer. So. Und deswegen möchte ich das halt einfach in der Öffentlichkeit nicht ausdiskutieren. Und damit habe ich auch schon immer
danke für den
das hat schon immer Leute genervt, das hat Leute schon immer abgefuckt. Ich glaube, der einzige Grund, warum ich diesmal so eine Breitseite kassiert habe und warum ich diesmal quasi so in die Öffentlichkeit gerutscht und auch so krass eingefeindet bin, Achtung, das ist gleich wieder etwas, was aus dem Kontext gerissen wird, das weiß ich jetzt schon. Ich glaube, der Grund, warum ich so krass angefeindet wurde, ist Gronkh. Also nicht, dass Gronkh was dafür kann, gar nichts. Ich glaube, die Debatte wurde durch Gronkh sehr, sehr groß in Teilen der Bubble, die sonst nicht mal auf dem Schirm gehabt hätten, dass das eigentlich ein Thema ist. Weil der Harry Potter Boykott oder intersektionaler Feminismus...
Aber dass man, das hat ja der Parabelritter auch gesagt in seinem Video, ne? Das ganze Thema ist halt einfach groß geworden und sie hat halt sehr viel darüber gepostet und dadurch ist sie natürlich auch so ein bisschen in den Mainstream halt einfach gerutscht. Ne? Also ich zum Beispiel, gut, mir war sie jetzt vom Namen, war sie mir schon ein Begriff. Was sie genau macht, wusste ich halt nicht. Erst dadurch habe ich halt so richtig... sie ja kennengelernt, sage ich mal, so online.
Bierrechte, Transrechte, das sind ja Themen, über die reden wir schon seit Jahren. Das ist nichts Neues. So, auch meine Takes sind nichts Neues. Nichts von dem, was ich gesagt habe, ist irgendwie wild. So. Aber dadurch, dass wir halt einen der bekanntesten Influencer in der Gaming-Szene hatten, die quasi in diesem Thema so eine Welle ausgelöst haben, sind super viele Leute auf den Trichter von diesem Thema gekommen, die halt überhaupt keine Berührungspunkte mit dem Thema haben. So absolut nada. Und diese Leute stören sich an mir. Und das ist fein. So, du kannst dich an mir stören.
Naja, das ist jetzt aber auch schon wieder halt, also sie sagt jetzt quasi, ja, die Leute sind halt nicht informiert genug, deswegen haben die was gegen mich. Aber wenn sie informiert wären und in der Bubble mit drin wären, dann würden sie gut finden, was ich mache. Also das ist schon wieder, das zeigt schon wieder diese Kritikunfähigkeit. Das sind so Aussagen, also weiß ich nicht, wie wenig kann man sich denn selbst reflektieren? So, also es hat ja auch keiner sich darüber beschwert, dass er sich dafür einsetzt. Und man kann ja auch Hogwarts Legacy von mir aus kritisieren, wenn man das in einem vernünftigen Rahmen macht, ist das ja auch in Ordnung. So, man kann ja auch sagen, ja, da steckt J.K. Rowling hinter und so. Aber wie sie das halt macht, ist halt, also das ist halt einfach too much gewesen. Und sie hat halt sehr viele komische Takes gebracht. Das hat da nichts damit zu tun, dass Leute nicht informiert genug sind, sondern das, was sie gesagt hat, halt einfach oftmals nicht so passend gewesen ist.
Ich habe nichts verändert an meiner Art. Also gar nichts. So niente. Ich mache genau das Gleiche, was ich seit 8 Jahren mache. Ich bin nur diesmal halt, ich bin halt so das Aushängeschild gewesen für das Thema und wurde dann halt in allen möglichen Bubbles geteilt, die halt einfach keine Verbindungspunkte damit haben und generell teilweise auch sehr fragwürdigen Content machen. Und das heißt, aus meiner eigenen Community habe ich keine Anfeindungen bekommen. Niemand aus meiner eigenen Community hat sich distanziert.
Ja klar, weil du halt ja auch von Ja-Sagern umgeben bist, die das jahrelang aufgebaut hast und sich sowas natürlich auch schnell radikalisiert, ne? Und dann sind die Leute natürlich eher weniger gegen einen. So, und ja gut, dass sie halt auch sagt, vor 8 Jahren habe ich ja schon das Gleiche gemacht, Finde ich, ist als Argument auch schwierig, weil man kann ja davon ausgehen, dass sie in den 8 Jahren ist sie natürlich erstmal reichweitentechnisch halt größer geworden und man darf natürlich auch nicht vergessen, dass die Gesellschaft natürlich auch dauernd im Wandel ist. Ne? Also wenn man jetzt überlegt, zum Beispiel, was ich vor 8 Jahren in Videos gesagt habe, so, da weiß ich nicht, also schäme ich mich heute für oder würde mich davon absolut distanzieren, weil das einfach gar nicht fit geht, so, ne? Aber damals war das halt so ein Teil davon. So, und heutzutage ist halt gerade so dieses so überwoke, Gutmenschen tun und so weiter, ist ja so sehr krass in den Mainstream gekommen und wird ja auch immer mehr jetzt kritisiert, weil es halt einfach so weit geht, dass man halt schon den Boykott von Hogwarts Legacy fordert beispielsweise, ne? Also so dieses Thema wird heute von vielen Leuten, die jetzt nicht dann vielleicht in ihrer Bubble sind, heutzutage viel, viel kritischer gesehen. Und natürlich ist die Chance, dass solche Sachen dann auch die eigene Bubble verlassen, auch abgesehen von Gronkh, einfach viel, viel größer, weil sich halt viele Leute daran stören. So, und weil man dann viel eher so seine Meinung dazu sagt.
Es gab ein paar einzelne Accounts, wirklich einzelne Accounts, die halt gesagt haben, boah, früher fand ich Pia cool, aber jetzt ist mir das alles viel zu krass, aber ist halt nicht nennenswert in Bezug auf die ganz große Summe. So.
Hast du nicht eben gesagt, niemand?
Ja. Dankeschön, mein Spitzbohne für den Prime Sub übrigens. Vielen, vielen, vielen lieben Dank dafür und Dankeschön, Leucat für die 4 Monate. Vielen, vielen, vielen lieben Dank. Dankeschön. Dankeschön, Karam, für 8 Monate und ganz viel Spaß hier weiterhin. Vielen, vielen, vielen lieben Dank.
Mir gibt keine 8 Monate.
Hallo Richard, ein wunderschön. Ich habe das schon mal auf Twitter gesagt und ich werde das ein einziges Mal auf Twitch sagen und dann ist das Thema für mich auch durch, weil die Leute immer wieder danach fragen und immer wieder darauf hinweisen. Ich werde mir diese kritischen Videos von manchen Content-Creatern aus problematischen Bubbles nicht anschauen.
Oder jetzt bin ich schon eine problematische Bubble.
Hat für mich keinen Mehrwert. Wirklich nicht. Die Debatte und alles, worum es geht, sind Transrechte. Geht es um queeren Feminismus, es geht um Transrechte, es geht um generell Rechte von queeren Personen, es geht um die systematische Unterdrückung und Verfolgung von diesen Personengruppen und das ist mein Fokus. Und
ja, oder natürlich ein Video von Christian Solmecke, was vor 2 Jahren rausgekommen ist, wo man natürlich darüber die ganze Zeit dann lügen kann über meine Anzeige wegen Volksverhetzung. Ne? Das gehört natürlich auch noch dazu. Herr Belief, Dankeschön für den Tier 1 Sub für 19 Monate immerhin.
Ein deutscher Content Creator, der inhaltlich nicht begreift, worum es dabei geht und einfach nur meinen Namen und das Thema ausschlachtet für Klicks, ist mir völlig egal, ist mir völlig schnurz. Hat keinen Einfluss auf meine Lebensrealität, ist auch einfach komplett verschwendete Lebenszeit, weil das einfach Bubbles sind, die will ich gar nicht erreichen. So, das I don't care, so, möchte ich nicht machen. Und es ändert auch nichts daran, weil es gibt Content Creator da draußen.
Ja, weiß ich nicht, die Aussage ist halt schon weird, ja, vor allem ich nehme keinen Einfluss auf sie, aber sie twittert über mich, blockiert mich auf Twitter, redet dauernd in Streams über mich, reagiert auf irgendein uraltes Video. Ja, Bruder, aber wirklich, ich habe keinen Einfluss und es ist ja auch vollkommen egal. Also, ja, sie will sich einfach der Kritik nicht stellen. So, das ist es halt einfach. Also, wie gesagt, ich bin auch für Transrechte. So, ich bin nicht dagegen. Ich weiß nicht, warum ich problematisch sein soll. So, Bruder, in meinen Videos habe ich schon mich 100-mal für homosexuelle, LGBTQ und sonst irgendwas eingesetzt. Habe immer gesagt, wir müssen in einer offenen, toleranten Welt leben. Was ist daran problematisch? So, nur weil ich dir halt einmal Kontra gebe bei einem Punkt, weil ich sage, du hast dich da komplett verrannt. Also, ja, also, ne, das zeigt halt wieder, sie will sich gar nicht damit befassen, weil sie sonst vielleicht auch Kritik annehmen müsste. Oder weil sie einfach zu vielen Punkten wahrscheinlich nichts sagen kann. Und dann sagt man einfach, nee, das ist so problematisch, diese Bubble da gehe ich gar nicht drauf ein. Komm mal, wir reagieren auf dieses 2 Jahre alte Video.
Und ich wäre auch sehr dankbar, wenn wir die Namen nicht weiter hier reproduzieren würden.
Also offensichtlich meint sie mich.
Ich möchte einfach gar nicht, dass diese Menschen weiter Aufmerksamkeit bekommen durch mich. Es gibt Content Creator da draußen, die leben einfach davon, dass sie Shitstorms erzeugen. Und das machen sie nicht nur mit mir, das machen sie halt konstant mit allen möglichen Menschen, andauernd. Und wenn man sich halt diese Accounts anschaut oder diese YouTuber oder auch Twitch-Streamer anschaut, dann ist da einfach jede Woche irgendein anderer Content-Creator Thema. Zu irgendeinem anderen Thema. Und die Person ist immer selber die erwachte Person, die jetzt super krass aufklärt und das hat irgendwas von einem Schwurblerkult und wird auch kommuniziert wie ein Schwurblerkult.
Hi.
Alter, Digga, das kannst du dir ja wirklich nicht geben, ne? Ey, Junge. Der Kuchen-TV, der Schwurbler. Ja, also fangen wir erstmal ganz vorne an. So, erstmal so dieses, also dass ihr halt auch sagt, so ja, dass ich jetzt so der Erwachte bin und keine Fehler mache oder whatever. Das ist ja erstmal nicht so, offensichtlich. Ne? Also ich weiß selber, dass ich jetzt nicht der fehlerfreiste Mensch bin. Ich bin keiner, der komplett perfekt durchs Leben geht, der nur gute Ansichten hat und der nie Fehler macht. So, ne? Ich habe schon genug Fehler auf jeden Fall zugegeben. So, das Ding ist, ich bin nun mal Meinungsblogger. So, und ich bin Meinungsblogger eher in der YouTube-Szene, sage ich mal. Ne? Also ich mache halt einfach Videos, meistens über Dinge bei anderen YouTubern, die jetzt vielleicht nicht so gut gelaufen sind. Ne? Wenn man jetzt sich zum Beispiel meinen Kanal hier einfach mal anguckt, ne? Jetzt Marcellos, das ist ein Antwortvideo, was ich gemacht habe, nachdem der 30 Videos über mich gemacht hat. Dann ABK habe ich sogar verteidigt, das war ja gut. Shoyoka hat auf mich reagiert. Sowas wie Manuelsen zum Beispiel. Also du kannst mir nicht sagen, dass das ein problematisches Video ist, wenn ich sage, gebt bitte Nazis keine unkritische Plattform. Beispielsweise so, ja, natürlich berichtet man halt über YouTuber, weil das halt einfach mein Thema ist. Also das, worüber ich halt berichten möchte. Aber wo, zum Beispiel, wenn ich mir jetzt diese Videos angucke, welche Videos genau lösen denn einen Shitstorm aus? So, ich mache doch, und da könnt ihr mich auch mögen oder nicht, aber ich mache ganz normale sachliche Videos, ja, wo ich vielleicht auch mal ein paar Jokes und so weiter einbaue oder ein Lachen nachmache. So, aber ansonsten mache ich doch ganz objektive Videos, wo ich ganz normal sachlich meine Meinung zu irgendwelchen Sachen sage. Ob das jetzt die militante Veganerin ist oder Livestreams, die Z-Max macht. So, das ist doch nicht so, dass ich die Videos mache mit dem Hintergrund, okay, ich will jetzt, dass die Person einen Shitstorm bekommt, weil dann würde ich das doch viel, viel angreifender machen. Also dann würde ich die Person in den Videos ja versuchen, so schlecht wie möglich dastehen zu lassen. Und genau das mache ich nicht. So, und ich finde es halt so schlimm, dass so eine Shoyoka, nur weil sie mich nicht mag, um nicht auf mich eingehen zu müssen, halt sowas von mir behauptet. So, also ich verstehe sowas halt einfach nicht. So, und ich meine, es sind nun mal auch viele Themen, die ich zum Beispiel halt auch wichtig finde, ne? Dass Batzi da anfängt mit Casino-Streams zu machen, finde ich wichtig. Das mit Manuelsen und so finde ich wichtig, so, ne? Das, hier zum Beispiel wurde T-Tech auch teilweise falsch dargestellt, finde ich wichtig, über sowas zu berichten, ne? Die militante Veganerin, die transphobe Sachen postet, wo ich sie für kritisiert habe. Übrigens, das, wofür du dich einsetzt. So, das sind, also finde ich, irgendwo kann man schon sagen, ja, so wichtige Videos, so in Anführungsstrichen.
Und du kannst...
So, und also das ist einfach lächerlich. Wirklich.
Halt nur verlieren. Es hat überhaupt keinen Mehrwert, darauf zu reagieren, weil ja auch in den Videos gar nicht um den Inhalt diskutiert wird. Man redet ja gar nicht über das eigentliche Thema.
Ja, wie sie zum Beispiel, indem sie auf Christian Solmecke reagiert, plötzlich, auf ein 2 Jahre altes Video.
Sondern es werden halt, ich werde zum Beispiel angegriffen, ich werde öffentlich diffamiert, es werden Sachen aus dem Kontext gerissen, manche Sachen werden einfach falsch zitiert, dann gehen wir noch weiterhin
Wo, Digga? So, sie wirft einfach mit negativen Sachen, wirft sie einfach in den Raum. So, vor allem, guck mal, wenn das Video von mir so schlecht ist, ich alles aus dem Zusammenhang reiße und das so fehlerhaft ist, Bruder, dann mach eine Reaction darauf, dann nehme ich doch komplett auseinander. Dann bereite dich vor, such dir die Stellen aus deinem Stream, dann zeig doch, was ich da rausgeschnitten habe. Bruder, du könntest meine komplette YouTube-Karriere und Seriosität komplett kaputt machen, wenn du eine Reaction machst, wo du mir beweisen kannst, dass das tatsächlich der Fall ist. Dann mach es doch. So, stell dir mal vor, die würde das wirklich machen und ich würde darauf reagieren und müsste jedes Mal sagen, okay, die hat recht, da habe ich einen Fehler gemacht. Ja, da habe ich einen Fehler gemacht. Das war falsch.
Begrifflichkeiten werden einfach falsch definiert, was ja completely insane ist. Du kannst mit Menschen nicht über Diskriminierung diskutieren, die Diskriminierung nicht mal erklären können und einfach eine eigene Definition für Diskriminierung haben. Ist ja completely lost.
Okay, ich glaube, da meint sie mich gar nicht mehr, war nie Thema.
Und du verlierst das einfach nur. Also du kannst da nicht gewinnen. So. Und deswegen besetze ich mich halt mit sowas auch einfach nicht auseinander, weil es halt einfach verlorene Lebenszeit. And it's fine, it's okay.
Okay, aber es ist keine verlorene Lebenszeit, auf ein 2 Jahre altes Video von Christian Solmecke zu reagieren oder was? Also weiß ich nicht, das... Ego Wert, Dankeschön für den Prime Sub. So, ich weiß nicht, kann auch sein, dass das hier schon endet.
Bringt nix. Schon witzig, weil du einfach genau dasselbe gemacht hast. Nee, habe ich nicht tatsächlich. Ich habe tatsächlich ein paar Fakten aufgezählt, weswegen ich mich mit manchen Menschen nicht auseinandersetzen möchte. Ich weiß, das ist super schwer zu begreifen und ich weiß, diese Fanboys wollen das nicht hören. Aber wenn du in Deutschland für Dinge strafrechtlich verurteilt worden bist, vor mehreren Gerichten, dann darf man das sagen und dann sind das Fakten. Rufmord ist es, wenn ich was behaupte, was nicht stimmt.
Boah, das ist halt wirklich, also, Digga, das ist so bescheuert, wirklich. Guck mal, niemand hat sich darüber beschwert, dass du zu mir zum Beispiel sagst, du bist wegen Volksverhetzung verurteilt. Weil ja, auch wenn das halt noch nicht rechtskräftig ist, ist das der Stand jetzt, dass ich da verurteilt bin. Das ist kein Rufmord, das hat auch niemand behauptet. So, aber was sie in diesem Video sagt, ich müsste jetzt halt das Video nochmal gucken, aber safe waren da auch Punkte dabei, wo sie ja ganz klar gelogen hat. Alleine, dass du irgendwie sagst, keine Ahnung, Star-Anwälte genommen, also ob das jetzt halt Rufmord ist, soll ich da dahingestellt, da hat sie aber gelogen, ich habe mir keine Star-Anwälte genommen, ich bezahle meinen Anwälten auch keine Suiten, und da waren noch irgendwelche anderen Sachen auf jeden Fall, die auch noch weird gewesen sind, ich habe das gerade nicht im Kopf. So, also sie hat in dieser Reaction hat sie so viele Lügen verbreitet und Falschaussagen gebracht. Das ist das, was kritisiert wird. Nicht, dass sie grundsätzlich sagt, ey, du wurdest dafür verurteilt, weil ja, das stimmt. Und was sie hier macht, ist ganz einfach, sich da rauszuholen, ist einfach, indem sie sagt, warum, der wurde doch verurteilt. Aber auf, ne, das ist einfach so dieser Oberbegriff. Ja, ich habe darauf reagiert, weil der wurde ja dazu verurteilt. Das ist doch in Ordnung, das zu sagen. Aber diese Punkte, worum es eigentlich geht, dass sie in dieser Reaction die ganze Zeit gelogen hat, um irgendwie gegen mich schießen zu können, das ignoriert sie einfach, weil das ist dann ja kein Thema mehr.
Wenn ich etwas erzähle, was rechtlich gesehen so durchgesetzt wurde, dann ist das kein Rufmord. Dann ist das eine Beschreibung einer Person. Ich weiß, das ist super schwer zu begreifen. Sehr, sehr schwer. Aber...
Ach stimmt, das Mädchen, was jahrelang vor Gericht musste, was gar nicht stimmt.
Sorry.
Ja, dann, also bei sowas merkt man halt wirklich, wie solche Menschen argumentieren. Und das sind halt leider auch meistens Menschen, die halt nicht so gut im Argumentieren sind, um das mal nett auszudrücken. Weil sie, wie gesagt, diesen ganzen Kontext einfach nur auf das Nötigste runterbricht und sagt, ja, guck mal, der wurde ja verurteilt. Aber wie gesagt, geht es ja darum, was sie in dieser Reaction gesagt hat. Nicht, dass sie sich das Video angeguckt hat oder dass sie gesagt hat, der wurde verurteilt. Und das lässt sie absichtlich weg, weil es bei ihrer Community auch reicht. Sie muss ja nicht weiter drauf eingehen. So, ist ja egal. So, das ist jetzt einfach Fakt und Ende. Und also das ist halt auch der Grund, also ich will jetzt auch nicht mit ihr ins Gespräch gehen, sondern ich will jetzt keiner, der sie jetzt irgendwie täglich anschreibt oder so, ich muss mir das nicht antun, da habe ich auch nicht viel Bock drauf so. Aber das wäre zum Beispiel ein Grund, warum sie nie im Leben mit mir ins Gespräch geht, weil ich halt diese ganzen kritischen Fragen stellen würde und sie halt genau weiß, dass sie darauf keine Antwort hat. Sie müsste dann nämlich zugeben, so, yo, ich habe darauf nur reagiert, um dir zu schaden, ich war überhaupt nicht informiert, habe einfach irgendwas behauptet, um dich schlecht dastehen zu lassen. Logischerweise will man das nicht.
Ja. Und ich kann und darf einfach sagen, dass ich mich nicht mit einer Person auseinandersetzen möchte. Punkt. Aber das hat ja auch nichts mit dem eigentlichen Thema zu tun, oder nicht? Hat es nicht, auf jeden Fall. Aber die Kritik, die ich aus diversen Kreisen bekommen habe, war ja nicht, hey Pia, das, was du gesagt hast, ergibt so keinen Sinn, weil Punkt. Die Kritik, die ich bekommen habe, ist, bist du behindert, du dumme Fotze, geh dich töten.
Ich habe kein Ziel.
Also in meinem Video habe ich genau das gemacht. Also das erste. Ich habe ganz klar ihre Aussagen gebracht und meinte so, nein, das ist anders. Digga, die tut mir wirklich so ein bisschen leid. Also die redet sich die Welt ja so krass schön. Alter, das ist wirklich heftig, ne?
XY hat dich hops genommen. Lösch dich für immer. Ich erstich dich.
Und dann sagen mir Leute, oh, geh doch bitte auf die Kritik ein. Auf welche denn genau?
Okay, warte. Sie geht jetzt nicht auf mein Video ein, was ja kritisch gewesen ist, und stellt das jetzt auf eine Stufe von irgendwelchen Leuten, die sie vielleicht beleidigt und bedroht haben. Was genau habe ich damit zu tun, wenn irgendwelche Leute nach meinem Video dich irgendwie beleidigen oder schreiben, Kuchen TV hat dich hops genommen? Wo ist da der Zusammenhang? Ich habe die Leute nicht dazu aufgefordert, sowas zu machen. Und warum kannst du nicht mit mir diskutieren, wenn ich dich kritisiere, weil irgendwelche anderen Leute im Internet sowas machen? Was habe ich mit denen zu tun? Bin ich mit denen verwandt oder verschwägert? Digga, das ist wirklich krass, wie heftig sie in ihrer eigenen Welt lebt, ne? Also sich so krass da so rauszureden und das wirklich so zu glauben, ist schon heftig. Also das ist...
Was ist das? Was ist das? Nein, Jeremy Pascal. Ich möchte mich nicht selbst suizidieren. Nein, ich habe auch keine Behinderung. Übrigens ist es ableistisch, wenn man Behinderung als Schimpfwort benutzt. Weißt du, was Ableismus bedeutet? Nein, oh, du beleidigst mich gerade wieder, weil ich versuche, dir was zu erklären. Kein Problem. Ableismus ist übrigens die Diskriminierung von Menschen aufgrund von chronischer Erkrankungen. Oh, du weißt nicht, was Diskriminierung ist, weil du mich gerade fragst, wie man Diskriminierung definiert und wer denn überhaupt entscheidet, was Diskriminierung ist und was nicht. Oh, du weißt auch nicht, was chronisch heißt. Ach, kein Problem. Natürlich setze ich mich an meinem freien Nachmittag hin und erkläre dir alles, während du mir 3-mal schreibst, dass ich eine Fotze bin. Das ist halt,
Ja, genau so läuft das.
das soll ein Gespräch sein.
Die hat 1800 Subs, ne? Es ist. 1800 Leute fanden sie so gut, dass sie gesagt haben: Ja, Mann, der gebe ich Geld im Monat. Und der Beleidigung gegen sie bitte löschen, ne? Auch hier übrigens.
Ich hab's by the way versucht, ne?
Ich habe 614 Subs.
Übrigens. Im Übrigen habe ich es versucht. Ich bin auf Dinge eingegangen. Es hat nicht funktioniert.
Wo denn?
Ich habe Gespräche regelmäßig verlassen, weil Leute von mir wollten, dass wir darüber diskutieren. Also es fängt an. Oh, ich guck mal, ob ich so einen Thread finde. Dann zeige ich euch, was ich damit meine,
Ja,
dass man über solche Sachen
danke,
nicht
Wamtex, für die
diskutieren
1500
kann.
Bits. Boah, Digga, zum Glück habe ich hier noch auf das Video reagiert, Alter. Beste Leben.
Dankeschön, Krabby, für den Prime-Sub. Vielen lieben
Und
Dank.
Denkfehler, Dankeschön für die 7 verschimpften Subs.
Vielen lieben Dank.
Junge, jetzt läuft's hier aber.
Ich habe versucht, auf die vermeintliche Kritik mir gegenüber einzugehen. Wo ist es denn?
Sie rechtfertigt jetzt, dass sie deine Kritik ignoriert, weil andere Leute hier dumm kommen. Och Mann, nimm's mir doch nicht weg, das wollte ich gleich sagen.
Sehr viel Spaß. Wo ist es denn? Also.
Zeigt sie das oder? Ja.
Ich habe die Person mittlerweile übrigens gemutet, ne? Also, folgendes. Es fängt an. Das ist einfach falsch. Die Kritik an ihr ist die Kritik, wie sie mit diesem Thema umgeht.
Okay, das habe ich sogar auch gelesen. So, es gibt keine Kritik am Thema, nur Kritik an ihr. Es geht nicht um Pia, es geht um Transpersonen und deren Sichtbarkeit, deren Problematik. Es wird komplett abgelenkt. So, das ist einfach falsch. Die Kritik an ihr ist die Kritik, wie sie mit diesem Thema umgeht. Richtig. Sie bringt menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen. Die Kritik ist aber berechtigt. Richtig.
Sie bringt menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen. Die Kritik ist damit berechtigt. Also, wir merken uns einmal, weil wir werden das vergessen zum späteren Zeitpunkt. Deswegen machen wir das jetzt einmal. Also,
so, aber ich finde es auf jeden Fall sehr lustig. Einer hat das schon reingeschrieben, ich will es jetzt nochmal sagen. Sie rechtfertigt jetzt wirklich, auf meine Kritik nicht einzugehen, weil Lucifer auf Twitter Sachen geschrieben hat, die sie nicht in Ordnung fand. Ich weiß jetzt noch nicht so ganz, ob sie denkt, dass Lucifer mein zweiter Account ist oder so. Ich kann dich allerdings beruhigen, ist er nicht. Deswegen verstehe ich jetzt nicht so ganz, worauf sie hinaus möchte, um ehrlich zu sein, weil das hat ja nichts damit zu tun, ob du dich mit mir auseinandersetzt oder nicht. Es gibt auch viele Personen aus deiner Bubble, die ich gebannt habe, weil die ganz klar Rufmord gegen mich begangen haben, mit mehreren Sachen, die mir vorgeworfen sind. Deswegen würde ich jetzt ja auch nicht sagen, boah, nee, mit Pia rede ich aber nicht, weil guck mal hier, da hat jemand auf Twitter mal das geschrieben.
Hinzufügen, Text, Kritik, Doppelpunkt. Menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen. So, jetzt haben wir das einmal festgehalten, was der Vorwurf ist. Ich schreibe das einmal hier hin, weil ich habe während des Dialoges vergessen, was der Vorwurf ist. Und es ist tatsächlich Absicht, dass das gemacht wird. Also
ja,
das ist kein Zufall, dass Leute so argumentieren. Man vergisst das dann einfach. Das heißt, danach halten wir Ausschau. Ich habe es einmal hier aufgeschrieben. Ihr könnt alle einmal nachweisen, dass ich das hier einmal rauszitiert habe, dass das quasi der Vorwurf ist. Gut, ich äußere mich Gib mir gern ein Beispiel, wo ich menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen gebracht habe, dann gehe ich drauf ein.
Stimmt, das ist ja ach, Digga, das triggert echt, ne, guck mal, hier hat die ein Leerzeichen zu viel.
Punkt, wo ich mir konkret was vorgeworfen wird. Dann wird geantwortet. Du sprichst einer Betroffenen die Meinung ab, vergleichst sie mit Trump-Anhängern und behauptest, sie weiß nur nicht, wie stark sie betroffen ist. Und das alles nur, weil sie nicht deiner Meinung ist. Sie betroffen findet das Spiel gut, du nicht betroffen findest es schlecht. Also antworte ich darauf. Es geht noch weiter, sorry. Dazu sagst du ja, das ist ja nur eine Einzelmeinung, ja, deine aber auch. Und ich bin mir sicher, sie ist nicht die einzige Transperson, schreibt man übrigens auseinander, die dieses Spiel mag. Das nur mal ein Beispiel. Ich weiß nicht, inwiefern das ein Beispiel für menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen ist, aber das ist ein Beispiel. Wahrscheinlich ist das noch was anderes, was sie nervt. Okay.
Ja, also, was daran menschenfeindlich, extrem und beleidigend ist, also, das Lustige ist, sie hat übrigens auch geantwortet, das habe ich auch gesehen, ich spreche Persha X nicht ihre Meinung ab. Ich weiß jetzt ehrlich gesagt nicht, wie sie auf Persha X kommt. Mir wäre neu, dass Persha X sich überhaupt dazu irgendwie geäußert hat oder im Dialog mit Shoyoka in irgendeiner Art und Weise war, aber okay. Es ging darum, wie ich in meinem zweiten Video ja gezeigt habe, dass eine Transperson beim Parabelritter reingeschrieben hat, hey, ne, Harry Potter hat mir super viel Kraft gegeben, ne, das war für mich so ein Ausweg aus der Realität, wo ich gemobbt wurde und so weiter und ich finde das Spiel gut und finde die Diskussion unklug. So, und da hat sie gesagt, ja, du weißt ja nur nicht, wie stark du betroffen bist und White Feminism und das ist wie mit den Frauen-Trump-Anhängern und so weiter. So, das ist halt menschenfeindlich, extrem und beleidigend, weil du einer betroffenen Person ihre Meinung absprichst, weil sie laut deiner Aussage nur so denkt, weil sie nicht informiert genug ist. Also sie darf als betroffene Person keine eigene Meinung haben. Du sprichst ihr die Meinung und die Gefühle ab, die sie hat, einfach nur, weil sie nicht deiner Meinung ist. Und das ist für mich schon menschenfeindlich, extrem und sehr beleidigend, um ehrlich zu sein.
Dankeschön übrigens, Nina, für den Raid. Vielen, vielen lieben Dank und Hallöchen an alle. Vielen, vielen, vielen lieben Dank dafür. Wieso? So, das ist nur ein Beispiel. So, jetzt kommt der nächste Vorwurf. Wieso kannst du andere Meinungen nicht akzeptieren? So, das ist der nächste Vorwurf. Den würde ich jetzt auch nochmal aufnehmen. So, wir haben noch einen Vorwurf. Also auf meine Frage, wo ich denn das obere mache, bekomme ich noch einen Vorwurf. Jetzt sind
Digga, sie hat das doch... Lucifer hat das hier doch geschrieben. Du sprichst einem Betroffenen die Meinung ab, vergleichst sie mit Tramo, behauptest, sie weiß nur nicht, wie stark sie betroffen ist. Das ist, also, du willst ein Beispiel, er gibt dir das Beispiel und du sagst, ja, der gibt mir einfach nur neue Vorwürfe. Hä?
Wir schon bei 3 Vorwürfen. Sondern muss sie immer gleich diskreditieren. Okay, ich habe also darauf geantwortet, ich spreche Persha X nicht ihre Meinung ab. Ich argumentiere, dass ich nicht ihrer Meinung bin und erkläre, warum. Ich setze sie auch nicht mit Trump-Wählern gleich, sondern erkläre das Phänomen des Betroffenen von Diskriminierung, sich selber hinter diese stellen, anhand von Frauen, die Trump wählen, obwohl er ein Sexist ist. Weitere Fragen dazu. Gibt es irgendjemanden in dem Chat, der gerade nicht versteht, was ich damit meine? Soll ich es nochmal erklären?
Ich verstehe nicht, wie sie auf Persha X kommt, um ehrlich zu sein. Das wird einfach so gedroppt.
Mache ich wirklich gerne, unironisch. Also ich erkläre das wirklich gerne noch einmal. Warum ich das verglichen habe. Soweit, so klar. Verstanden. Okay. Hab's verstanden. Wundervoll. Und ich erkläre, dass das kein Einzelfall ist. Also Leute, die sich hinter ihre eigene Diskriminierung stellen, sind kein Einzelfall. Und dass man immer einzelne Betroffene findet, die mit Diskriminierung nicht so ein Problem haben. Das wird's immer geben. Ich akzeptiere ihre Meinung. Ich habe auch noch nie irgendwas unter irgendein Video oder irgendeinen Beitrag oder in irgendeiner Weise von Persha X gepostet.
Digga, es geht doch gar nicht um Persha X, Digga. Ich
habe nur immer wieder, wenn ich auf sie angesprochen wurde, gesagt, dass ich nicht ihrer Meinung bin und dass ich von ihrer Meinung und dem, was sie im Internet vertritt, nicht viel halte. Das ist völlig unabhängig davon, dass sie eine Transfrau ist. So, ich finde die Dinge, die sie sagt, einfach teilweise ziemlich scheiße und nicht zu Ende gedacht. Punkt. Fertig. So.
Ja, ich glaube, da kenne ich auch jemanden.
Ich akzeptiere ihre Meinung und dennoch muss ich sie nicht teilen. So, sie kann ja machen, was sie möchte. Ich habe sie weder angefeindet, noch habe ich ihr irgendwie gedroht, noch habe ich ihr gesagt, boah, sie darf das nicht so sagen. Ich bin einfach nicht ihrer Meinung und ich finde viele Dinge, die sie sagt, scheiße. Fertig. That's it. Ich finde es absurd, dass mir konstant vorgeworfen wird, dass ich andere Meinungen nicht akzeptiere, wo ich doch keinen einzigen Kommentar unter die Beiträge von anderen schreiben, dessen Meinung ich nicht bin, während ihr mich zuspammt weil ihr nicht meiner Meinung seid. Ironisch. Okay, schauen wir mal, ob ich vielleicht jetzt eine Antwort bekomme wegen den ursprünglichen Vorwürfen.
Boah, Digga, will die jetzt alles vorlesen, Alter Junge, das wird mir langsam zu viel, ne? Das dauert ja mega lange.
Ja. Die Sache mit Trump hat ja erstmal gar nichts damit zu tun, dass eine Transperson gerne Harry Potter spielt. Hat ja auch niemand gesagt. Und das machst du einfach ziemlich oft. Was denn? Du bist mit Argumenten konfrontiert zu einer bestimmten Sache. Ob die jetzt von einem Kuchen, einem Ritter oder sonst wem kommen ist, völlig egal. Anstatt dass du drauf eingehst, schweifst du aber ab und versuchst es mit völlig anderen Sachen wie Trump oder irgendwelchen Gesetzen in den USA zu rechtfertigen.
Ja.
Nein, Lucifer. Ich habe ein Phänomen erklärt, anhand eines Beispiels. Ich weiß auch, dass Trump nichts mit Harry Potter zu tun hat. Es war ein Beispiel, um ein Phänomen zu erklären, das du nicht kennst. Das macht...
Ja, guck, aber alleine hier könnte man halt sagen, okay, guck mal, das war als Ding gemeint, als irgendwie, keine Ahnung, hier jetzt Beispiel oder whatever, das ist dann vielleicht einfach nicht so ganz rübergekommen. So, anstatt aber hier den Fehler bei sich zu suchen und zu sagen, okay, da habe ich mich vielleicht tatsächlich nicht so gut geäußert, direkt wieder ein Angriff. Nee, du bist schuld, weil du bist nämlich in dem Thema nicht drin.
Aber keinen Sinn. Danke, dass du deinen eigenen Text analysierst. Du weichst den Kritikpunkten immer aus. Ich habe dich darum gebeten, dass du mir erklärst, wo ich menschenfeindlich, extrem und beleidigend bin und wo ich andere Meinungen nicht akzeptiere. Und als Antwort schreibst du mir, ich weiche Kritikpunkte aus.
Naja, hat er geschrieben. Er ist nicht ausgewichen. Und das Lustige ist, wenn du Kritik nicht ausweichst, warum gehst du da nicht auf mein Video ein? So, ihr müsst mal überlegen, sie könnte auf mein Video reagieren, wo sie halt sachliche, vernünftige Kritik bekommen hat. Stattdessen nutzt sie ihre Zeit jetzt mit irgendeinem Twitter-Nutzer. Den, jetzt so kein Front, aber den kennt ja keiner, dass einfach irgendein Typ diskutiert sie. Und macht sich dann im Stream darüber lustig. Wo ist da jetzt der Mehrwert, irgendwie mit dieser Person zu diskutieren? Ich verstehe das halt nicht so ganz. Und dann zu sagen, hey, guck, ich gehe auf Kritik ein, weil ich habe ja auch da, habe ich doch drauf geantwortet.
Was soll ich denn noch mehr tun, als zu fragen? Und wenn du anderer Meinung bist, dann ist das ja okay. Ach, jetzt ist es okay. Aber genau da ist ja der Punkt. Du sagst, jede Meinung, die nicht deine Meinung ist falsch. Und diskreditierst diese. Hä? Jede Kritik an deiner Meinung diskreditierst du auch als Relativierung. Du akzeptierst andere Meinungen nicht. Nein, tue ich nicht. Ich sage, dass Dinge Themen relativieren, wenn diese Dinge Themen relativieren. Du akzeptierst andere Meinungen nicht.
Ja, weißt du, keine Ahnung, so, das ist halt... Also ich verstehe jetzt auch, wie gesagt, den Sinn nicht. Also bei Twitter wurde noch nie dafür genutzt, irgendwie sinnvolle Diskussionen und so weiter zu führen. So, es ist doch klar, dass er da jetzt nicht, keine Ahnung, irgendwelche Videostamps oder sonst irgendwas raussuchen kann. Der hat das vielleicht, keine Ahnung, am Handy geschrieben oder sonst irgendwas. Und wie gesagt, also ich verstehe es halt nicht, weil sie sagt, sie geht auf Kritik ein. Guck mal, ich habe hier auf diesen Typen bin ich ja eingegangen. Ich weiß nicht, also es ist ja halt offensichtlich, da er auch zum Beispiel mich erwähnt hat, so, dass er ja wahrscheinlich meine Videos gesehen hat. So, dann geh doch auf die richtige Kritik ein und überleg doch mal, warum kommt sowas? Warum denkt er denn, dass ich menschenfeindlich, extrem und beleidigende Aussagen bringe? Vielleicht gucke ich mal das Kuchen-TV-Video, vielleicht ist da ja sinnvolle Kritik drin oder irgendwas, was es erklären würde. Dann kann ich das ja richtig stellen. Somebody, danke für den Prime-Sub.
Nochmal, das ist schon wieder der Vorwurf. Zum dritten Mal. Immer noch ohne Beispiel. Und die einzige Person, die bis jetzt keine andere Meinung akzeptiert, ist die Person, die mir ein halbes Buch unter einen Thread schreibt, weil ich anderer Meinung bin als sie. What an irony. Und
Oder er hat ganz normal seine Meinung gesagt. So, ja, okay, es sind dann halt mehrere Tweets. Twitter ist halt schwierig für solche Diskussionen. Ist es jetzt verkehrt, dass er ausführlich darauf antwortet? Also sie geht auf Kritik ein, liest die Kritik vor und sagt jetzt, ja Digga, du hast ja ein halbes Buch geschrieben. So, also...
Und genau das ist das, was so viele aufregt.
Ich kann dieses Ziel nicht angreifen.
Und bei Kuchen ist direkt der Fall, geht es meiner Meinung nach eben gar nicht, dass du nicht auf seine Argumente sachlich eingehst, sondern nur sagst, ich sage dazu nichts, weil er ist ja so ein böser Mensch und schaut ein Video zu einem ganz anderen Thema über ihn vor ein paar Jahren an.
Das ist aber noch aktuell, das läuft noch.
Das hat aber mit der eigentlichen Thematik, nämlich dem Spiel, rein gar nichts zu tun. Es ist richtig, es ist absolut wahr. Es hat mit der eigentlichen Thematik, mit dem Spiel überhaupt gar nichts zu tun. Das ist der Grund, warum ich die Videos von KuchenTV nicht schaue. Weil sie mit der eigentlichen Thematik nichts zu tun haben, sondern nur daraus bestehen, mich als Person zu diskreditieren und anzufeinden. Und deswegen schaue ich sie nicht. Du hast es gerade beantwortet. Wenn es dabei um das Spiel gehen würde und um J.K. Rowling und um Transfeindlichkeit, dann würde ich sie gucken. Geht es aber nicht. Es geht um mich. Eine Person, die wegen Volksverhetzung verurteilt wurde und jetzt gerade wieder eine Anzeige vorgelesen hat wegen Beleidigung im Internet, macht Videos zu mir und als Resultat schreiben mir 100 Menschen, dass ich mich umbringen gehen soll und keine Ahnung was alles und deswegen reagiere ich darauf nicht, weil es nichts mit dem Thema zu tun hat. Danke, dass du es nochmal erklärt hast.
Ja, sie hat die Videos halt irgendwie nicht gesehen, aber urteilt halt trotzdem über den Inhalt so, ne? Also, keine Ahnung. An sich hat sie natürlich recht. Ich bin natürlich auf die Aussagen von Shoyoka eingegangen. Also, es ging natürlich jetzt eher um Shoyoka als um das Spiel. Aber trotzdem hat das Spiel ja eine ganz zentrale Rolle in dem Video, weil es ja immer noch darum geht, was sie dazu sagt. So, wie ihr Aktivismus aussieht, wie sie damit umgeht. Ja, und halt, was sie zu diesem Spiel und also was für Argumente sie bringt, dafür, dass zum Beispiel ein Boykott in Ordnung ist. Also ich verstehe halt nicht so ganz, warum geht man denn darauf nicht ein? Also sollte doch ein Diskurs laufen, oder nicht? So, man wird ja nie, wenn jetzt eine andere Person zum Beispiel auf mich dann reagiert, wird es ja nie 100% um den Inhalt gehen. Es wird ja immer irgendwo um die Person gehen, weil die Person ist ja die was gesagt hat und darauf beziehe ich mich ja. Also das macht halt überhaupt keinen Sinn, was sie da sagt. Und warum sie da jetzt zum Beispiel auch dieses Beleidigungsding jetzt wieder mit reinbringt. So, weißt du, das wird einfach so stehen gelassen. So, Bruder, jemand hat mich in der Instagram-Story gefrontet, so hat mir vorgeworfen, dass ich Anti-Aggressionspillen nehme und ich habe geschrieben, die ist dumm. Und für dieses die ist dumm wurde ich verurteilt. Also sie stellt das so hin, als wäre ich jetzt irgendeiner, der komplett rumbeleidigt, so einfach nur, weil sie wieder den Kontext weglässt, weil sie genau weiß, dass sie das sonst nicht gegen mich nutzen könnte, weil das wird sie, glaube ich, auch lächerlich finden, da bin ich mir ziemlich sicher.
Das ist das Fazit. Ich habe dann noch versucht, das zu erklären. Da geht's weiter.
Oh.
Ich habe auch nie gesagt, dass Trump was mit Harry Potter zu tun hat. Ich glaube, du hast mich nicht richtig verstanden. Ich erkläre das gerne noch einmal. Dann habe ich es noch einmal erklärt. Und dann schreibt mir die Person, aber wer setzt jetzt fest, was Diskriminierung ist und was nicht? Und dann ist halt Ende. Also das ist halt einfach der Punkt, wo dann halt einfach Ende ist. Weil wenn du in einer Diskussion mit jemandem landest, der einfach sagt, naja, aber Diskriminierung kann man ja jetzt drüber diskutieren, was das ist, dann hast du halt einfach verloren. So. Und ich habe jetzt, ne, ich bin diesen ganzen Thread durchgegangen.
Naja, aber die Person hat doch an sich recht. Also man muss ja das Wort irgendwie definieren oder schauen, okay, was ist denn jetzt diskriminierend oder nicht? Ist es diskriminierend, Harry Potter zu spielen zum Beispiel? Das ist ja das, worüber die ganze Zeit eigentlich diskutiert wird. Das wäre ein Punkt, worüber man diskutieren kann. So, dass jetzt zum Beispiel das N-Wort diskriminierend ist, da braucht man sich nicht drüber unterhalten. Ne? Man kann sich halt die Definition von Diskriminierung angucken, kann dann schauen, woher kommt das N-Wort, wie wird das benutzt, was ist die Geschichte des Wortes und dann sieht man, okay, das passt da halt rein. So, aber heutzutage ist es ja so, dass viel, viel mehr Sachen als diskriminierend dargestellt werden, als es halt eigentlich ist. Und natürlich ist es dann wichtig, sowas halt auch zu klären, was genau ist denn jetzt, also wo fängt das an?
Ich habe kein einziges Mal in irgendeiner Weise gehört, wo ich jetzt menschenfeindlich bin. Na, das sind ja die Vorwürfe, die wir hatten. Menschenfeindliche, extreme und beleidigende Aussagen. Es gab kein einziges Beispiel für kein einziges dieser Dinge.
Doch.
Und es gab kein einziges Beispiel dafür, dass ich andere Meinungen nicht akzeptiere.
Sie hat jetzt 30 Minuten argumentiert, dass sie andere Meinung akzeptiert und dann den Typen auf Twitter geblockt, der eine andere Meinung hat.
Ich glaube,
ja, so
in etwa von 40 verschiedenen Accounts in den letzten 4 Wochen gehört, dass ich menschenfeindliche, extremistische Aussagen tätige. Und ich habe kein einziges Beispiel bekommen. Kein einziges. Und das einzige Argument, das immer wieder aufkommt, ist, aber sie hat einer Transperson ihre Meinung abgesprochen, deswegen ist sie transfeindlich. Und dann möchte ich gerne antworten, alles klar, dann bist du aber sexistisch, weil ich bin eine Frau und wenn ich mit deiner Logik dem ganzen Gespräch folge, dann bist du in dem Moment ein Sexist, indem du mir widersprichst. Oh.
Digga, ich weiß nicht, was ich dazu sagen soll, so. Keine Ahnung, also... Bruder, du hast dir die Meinung abgesprochen, weil du sagst, ja, sie ist halt betroffen, aber sie hat sich einfach nicht genug informiert, deswegen ist ihre Meinung nichts wert, weil sie hat eine andere Meinung. Das ist doch was ganz anderes.
Oh, ups, jetzt bist du Schachmatt. Hoppala. Kannst du halt nichts machen.
Die ist auch richtig überzeugt davon, ne?
Okay, ich bin raus hier. Dieser Circle Jack ist ja nicht erträglich. Jede Kritik ist unsinnig. Was ist? Kommt nur von Treuen. Ja, Mad Max gibt.
Ja, wie gesagt, also ich verstehe halt auch nicht, wenn sie so toll auf Kritik eingeht und da stundenlang mit irgendeinem Typen bei Twitter diskutiert, so, warum guckst du da nicht mein Video so? Also es ist halt.
Beispiel.
Wenn du doch so toll mit Kritik umgehst.
Kritisiere mich. Let's go. Hit me. Habe ich oben schon. Wo? Schreib's gerne noch mal rein. In dem Chat sind 1100 Leute. Ich hab's nicht gesehen. Schreib gerne rein, wo du mich kritisieren möchtest. Ich bin da. Ich bin ready. Let's go.
Ja, weiß ich nicht. Was geht so? Ganz schön kalt geworden, ne? Nee, warm, Digga, heute 15 Grad. Ich bin mit Jacke rausgegangen.
Man ist rechtlich erst verurteilt, wenn man alle Instanzen durch ist und nicht mehr in Revision gehen kann. Das minderjährige Mädchen hatte nie mit der Sache zu tun. Dass das minderjährige Mädchen nie was mit der Sache zu tun hatte, tut mir leid. Dass die Anzeige wegen Beleidigung durch ist, hat man ja gelesen. Und er wurde ja davor auch schon verurteilt. Du darfst wortwörtlich zu der Person sagen, dass sie wegen Volksverhetzung verurteilt wurde, weil das nicht die erste Anzeige ist und die erste Anzeige ist durch. Das ist die zweite. Und die zweite ist in zweiter Instanz bereits auch durch.
Ja und? Aber sie hat einmal Entschuldigung gesagt, immerhin.
Fertig. Gut, das ist jetzt die Kritik. Wo ist jetzt die Kritik an mir? Weil darum ging es ja eigentlich. Du hast ja gesagt, dass ich Kritik nicht annehme.
Sag nicht, die redet noch so lange über mich.
Die hat auch nichts mit der Beleidigung zu tun. Und trotzdem hat er eine minderjährige Person in einem Video Fotze genannt. Natürlich sagt mir das Mittelframing was, auf jeden Fall.
Warum macht sie das eigentlich die ganze Zeit? Hat die irgendwie Husten oder ist das einfach so ihr Ding?
Okay, das heißt, die gesamte Kritik, Mad Max, die du mir gegenüber gerade hast, ist, dass ich mir ein Video von Solmecke angeschaut habe, der Rechtsanwalt ist und über diese Sachen gesprochen hat, über eine Person, die verurteilt wurde wegen Volksverhetzung und Beleidigung und jetzt gerade wieder eine Anzeige deswegen hat, die dafür bekannt ist, in ihren Videos Menschen zu beleidigen und zu beschimpfen, wegen dessen Community, weil diese Person...
Ja, ich weiß nicht, was ich noch dazu sagen soll. Wo beleidige ich denn die ganze Zeit? Wo bin ich denn dafür bekannt, Digga? Also, die hat sich halt, glaube ich, die hat sich nie mit mir befasst offen. Also, das sind einfach nur irgendwelche Kampfbegriffe, die sie halt gegen mich nutzt, um da halt nicht drauf einzugehen. Und das ist das Einzige, was sie sagen kann. So, und sie versteht auch die Kritik nicht mit diesem Volksverhetzungsding. Ja, natürlich kann sie drauf reagieren, ist doch in Ordnung so. Aber erst sagen, ja, lenkt nicht vom Thema ab und dann auf so ein 2 Jahre altes Video zu reagieren, einfach nur um in der Bubble gegen mich schießen zu können, ist halt lächerlich. Ende.
7 Videos zu mir gemacht hat, ich mehrfach Strafanzeige erstellen musste in den letzten 2 Wochen, weil mir Leute aus dieser Bubble Gewalt wünschen und mir schreiben, ich soll mich umbringen gehen. Und jetzt möchtest du was genau von mir haben? Was genau möchtest du mir gerade sagen?
Wo habe ich Shoyoka beleidigt?
Dass ich ein bisschen netter sein soll? Was möchtest du von mir gerade?
Sie riecht aber auch, wer aus welcher Bubble kommt. Ja, safe.
Also ich ernsthaft. Was ist denn die Erwartungshaltung als mich als Person? So. Wo ist die Kritik an mir als Person? Was soll ich denn noch machen? Soll ich noch Danke sagen? Zu löschen, die alle aus dieser Bubble haben und das alles wegen einem Dude, der mehrere Anzeigen hatte, weil das, oh Spoiler, nicht zum ersten Mal passiert. Was genau möchte gehen soll, ableistische Kackscheiße reproduziert, Bubble kommen, die mich beschimpft und beleidigt haben, meine MitarbeiterInnen beschimpft und beleidigt haben, mir gesagt haben, dass ich mich umbringen gehen soll, ableistische Kackscheiße reproduziert haben und das alles wegen einem Dude, der mehrere Anzeigen hatte, weil das, oh Spoiler, nicht zum ersten Mal passiert. Was?
Ja, und jetzt? Ja, also was will sie jetzt mit mehreren Anzeigen? So, also, Digga, das sind einfach nur Kampfbegriffe, womit sie um sich wirft. So, wo ist jetzt dein Punkt?
Was genau möchtest du von mir?
Ja, was wollt ihr?
So, man merkt halt einfach so, die kann gar nicht objektiv oder so darauf eingehen. Die versucht die ganze Kritik einfach wegzuschieben und mit irgendwelchen Kampfbegriffen dafür zu sorgen, dass sie gar nicht erst irgendwie darauf eingehen muss, weil sie mich als Person einfach so krass runtermacht, dass die Zuschauer sagen so, ja, mit dem musst du dich echt nicht befassen.
Urteilt und hat... Ich will dich nicht als Person kritisieren, sondern dass du Anschuldigungen und Tatsachen nennst, die nicht stimmen. Diese Person wurde mehrfach verurteilt und
Digga,
hat mehrere laufende Anzeigen
nicht
gegen sich und postet Fotos dieser Anklageschriften selber im Internet. Wenn diese Person diese Anklageschriften selber ins Internet postet und dann 3 Wochen später behauptet, dass es die nie gegeben hätte, obwohl diese Person sie
Wo habe ich denn behauptet, dass es die nie gegeben
selber
hat?
gepostet hat, dann ist das irgendwann nicht mehr meine Schuld, wenn ich in den letzten 4 Jahren eine Übersicht darüber verliere, wo jetzt wirklich was passiert ist und wo was wieder ein Prank war.
Hä? Also ich habe das, also das macht jetzt gar keinen Sinn mehr, was sie sagt. Also jetzt ist sie ja komplett abgedriftet.
Ist nicht mein Problem. Dann hör auf, Leute mit Anzeigen zu pranken.
Mit welcher Anzeige habe ich denn jemanden geprankt? Also, das macht jetzt wirklich gar keinen Sinn mehr. Also jetzt ist sie komplett weg.
Einfach crazy. Die Sachen nicht anschaue, weil ich möchte diese Bubble gar nicht haben. Ich will Leute, die solche Content Creator konsumieren und allen Ernstes unironisch solchen Content Creator folgen und auch noch glauben, dass das was Sinnvolles ist. Ich will diese Leute nicht in meiner Bubble haben.
Aber warum das nicht sinnvoll ist, das kann sie halt nicht erklären,
leider. Das hat für mich keinen Mehrwert. Ja. Wirklich. Das ist für mich so dermaßen befremdlich und so dermaßen widerlich. Wenn du als Opfer von so einer Anfeindung und rechtfertigen, warum du dich mit einer ernstes auch noch glaubt, auseinandersetzen möchtest, in einer Sekunde, in irgendeinem Moment dich selbst verlierst. Und wenn es nur ist, dass du versuchst, vor einer Community zu rechtfertigen, warum du dich mit einer hetzenden Person nicht auseinandersetzen möchtest. Wenn du dich in einer Sekunde verlierst, dann hast du diese kleinen Goldfische, die allen Ernstes auch noch glauben, ja, aber jetzt ist gerechtfertigt, wenn wir ihr zum Suizid raten. Halt's Maul, wirklich. Niemand
Digga,
vermisst dich hier.
Die braucht wirklich Hilfe. Also wirklich, Digga, das ist nicht mehr normal, wie sie sich das zurechtdreht.
Geh einfach. Also ich will wirklich keine Partei für XY ergreifen, aber sollte man aufgrund der Vergangenheit von XY also keinen Respekt mehr vor ihm haben, also das wirkt hart auf mich. Ich habe Respekt vor einer Person, wenn seine Videos zu mir nicht mehr dafür sorgen, dass mir 100 Menschen den Suizid wünschen.
Bruder, dafür kann ich doch aber nichts, was Leute machen, nachdem die mein Video gesehen haben. Also, was soll ich dagegen tun? Ich habe doch im 3. Video auch gesagt, beleidigt sie nicht, bitte lasst sie einfach in Ruhe. Also ich habe ja quasi genau das gemacht, was du jetzt gerade wolltest, oder nicht? So, ich kann doch nichts dafür, wenn da irgendwelche Leute dann trotzdem rübergehen.
Fertig. Nein, ich habe keinen Respekt vor so einem Menschen. Nicht im geringsten. Die Person hat letzte Woche erst wieder einen Beitrag darüber gepostet, dass sie wegen Beleidigung angezeigt wurde. Wie viele Anzeigen musst du bekommen, damit Menschen sagen dürfen, dass sie mit dir nichts zu tun haben wollen? Also,
was haben denn Anzeigen damit zu tun, ob man mit jemandem was zu tun haben möchte oder nicht? Du musst dir doch anschauen, warum man angezeigt wurde.
Wie viel muss es denn sein, damit ihr mich in Ruhe lässt und damit ich gerechtfertigt sagen darf, ich möchte einfach nicht?
Ja, aber dann rede doch nicht über mich, Digga. Junge, weißt du so, also wenn sie darauf nicht reagieren möchte, es ist ja komplett in Ordnung, aber dann reagier doch nicht auf ein 2 Jahre altes Video, dann red doch nicht jetzt schon wieder eine Stunde über mich im Stream. Bruder, ich wollte eigentlich schon lange aufhören und hänge hier fest, weil sie nicht aufhört, über mich zu reden. Digga, das ist halt, Junge, ich muss auch mein Video noch rausrennen, was heute kommen soll. So, ich komme jetzt zu gar nichts, weil sie die ganze Zeit über mich redet. So, dann sag doch gar nichts. So, dann ignoriert das doch einfach, dann war's das doch auch. Nein, sie redet wieder über mich. So, da reagiere ich natürlich wieder drauf, weil ich das richtig stellen möchte, Digga. Und im nächsten Stream quatscht sie dann wieder über mich und hetzt gegen mich.
Kann doch nicht dein Ernst sein.
Ja, also die wirklich, die ist echt in ihrer komplett eigenen Welt.
Richtig. Ich habe keine Transperson beleidigt. Ja, nichts. Ich habe kein Video dazu gemacht. Ich sitze hier. Er ist die schuldige Person. Ich hoffe, mir die Schuld dafür zu geben, dass der Dude 7 Videos zu mir macht.
Ja.
Sorry, dass ich Urlaub... Also so generell gesprochen, ich möchte über diese Videos und über all diese Dinge möchte ich nicht mehr hier sprechen.
Dann lass es doch bitte auch. Ich muss los, wirklich. Deswegen überspringe ich das halt schon. Ich will los. Ich muss die QNV-Anker-Videos hochladen, QNV rausrennen und so, aber dann lass es jetzt auch. Ja, dann abschließen. Ja, dann schließ es jetzt bitte ab.
Und ich möchte gerne mich jetzt wieder auch mit anderen Dingen beschäftigen. Dutzende Videos und Statements von mir dazu, so gegangen. Zum jetzigen Zeitpunkt keine einzige Kritik mir als Person gegenüber, auf die ich nicht eingegangen bin. Gar nichts. Wirklich, nada.
Digga, halt's Maul,
ich habe
Digga.
tausende Sachen gesichtet, weil wir auch Strafanzeigen stellen mussten. Das hat teilweise mit der Bubble zu tun, teilweise mit einer Bubble, die schon davor da war.
Ich bin auf alles eingegangen, Digga.
Explizite. Ich bin auf alles eingegangen. Wurde und werde nicht gecancelt. Das ist einfach super
wichtig. Hier hören wir auf jeden Fall jetzt auf, weil, also ich will auch los und also sie wiederholt sich einfach nur noch, ne? Ich weiß nicht, was ich dazu noch großartig sagen soll. Also generell so Beleidigungen und so weiter anzuzeigen macht, das ist gut, ne? Wenn das aus meiner Community kommt, tut's mir auch leid. Woher auch immer sie das wissen will, außer die Person folgt mir vielleicht, okay. Ja, ich weiß nicht, was ich noch großartig dazu sagen soll, wirklich, also wie man so krass in seiner eigenen Welt hängen kann, ist wirklich heftig so. Man merkt, dass sie einfach nur irgendwelche ad hominem Schlagargumente gegen mich finden möchte, um halt weiter gegen mich hetzen zu können, um nicht auf mich einzugehen. Wie gesagt, ich will dir nochmal sagen, sie muss nicht auf mich eingehen. Ich mache diese Videos nicht, damit sie dann drauf reagiert und ich mir darauf irgendwie, keine Ahnung, mich befriedigen kann, wenn sie sagt, ja, es tut mir leid, da habe ich mich verlaufen oder so. Es ist komplett legitim, wenn sie nichts dazu sagen möchte. Ja, es ist komplett ihr Ding. Aber Shoyoka, dann tu mir doch auch bitte den Gefallen und sag gar nichts dazu. Also anstatt jetzt einmal auf so ein Video zu reagieren und den Zuschauern von ihr zu zeigen, deswegen reagiere ich nicht weiter auf den, weil guck mal, da und da und da hat er Lügen über mich verbreitet, was ich nicht gemacht habe, aber sie wird es wahrscheinlich versuchen so hinzustellen, labert sie halt einen Stream nach dem anderen durchgehend über mich. Aber auch nur angreifend mit Falschaussagen. Du musst nicht auf mich eingehen, dann lass es. Aber dann lass das Thema doch ganz ruhig und sag bitte einfach gar nichts. Wirklich, es ist so schlimm. Es ist so schlimm. Ja, und hiermit beende ich das. Wahrscheinlich redet ihr jetzt noch eine Stunde weiter. Ey.
He's gonna restate it again. He's gonna restate it.
Relationship, and to what extent?
The man should leave in the relationship.
Steven, I'm telling you right now.
No jumper. No jumper.
But I think the main thing is that America is not able to offer any overarching, coherent vision that's attractive, that's irrational even, that's exciting, Dionysian. And thus, we're kind of retreating into this like fragmented societies of BLM angst, alt-right angst, Fuentes yay angst, screw the patriarchy angst. They're probably literally screwing the patriarchy. That's anyway. Because we're not offering anything. When John Winthrop, before he even set foot on this soil, he had an idea of what America was. It was this New Jerusalem concept. It was a highly fundamentalist, puritanical notion. one that I don't resonate with, to be honest. But it was something. He defined it even before he was here. We've had various ways in the Cold War. I mean, I have this article I'm going to publish, but it's about how U2 kind of predicted the Cold War or ended the Cold War in some crazy way. Though we're torn in two, we can be one. They sang that in 1983 before 1989, 91, and everything changed. And so they were imagining some vision that you wanted to come be a part of. And I think for Bono and U2 is actually deeply Christian. This is there has to be something there, or we are going to fragment into things like BLM and the alt-right.
So here, this is something also that I kind of think in terms of. So earlier I alluded to this idea that I feel like the idea of a unified America was a bit illusory. I feel like we felt that way, or we feel like in the past it was that way. So Adam, when you talk about like hip hop and you talk about like rappers, I feel like one thing that's really important for a lot of these guys, that a lot of kind of middle class America, and I feel like people have lost, is where you're from.
Oh yeah, huge.
Yeah, but I think that I feel like in the United States, I feel like we used to be a lot more local, but again, because of the internet, I think something happened to where now the only thing everybody knows. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Everybody knows, like, if you ask like a fucking conservative in Wyoming or Montana or whatever, like, which politician do you hate the most? They're going to talk to you about like people from the House of Representatives in New York.
Yes.
They're going to talk to you about people that have no impact on their lives whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that there's an illusion I think that's created in the past America, where everybody's involved in their own communities and their own churches and their own unions and their own local politics scene, and you feel like you're kind of a unified America, even though this community and this community might feel totally fucking different about things, but in their own communities, they've achieved some sort of equilibrium where they feel comfortable and confident. But now, fuck local politics, everybody's on this national level, and no way can you get 340 million people to all feel the same about fucking anything.
But in a weird way, we all do feel the same. It's kind of both because, you know, like a rancher in Wyoming, because he's on social media to some degree, is going to be like, those BLM riots, they're burning down cities, like Antifa's coming from, and it's like, listen, let me, as someone who was assaulted by Antifa, I can tell you, like, they are not coming to rural Montana, like, just to let you know.
But I mean, on that same thing, though,
we're brought together in this kind of incredible way.
Yeah, but in like but in a horrible way. Because the reality is that like if you were to poll a ton, like this is something. Oh my God, my mind. I changed so many opinions on politics when I realized this. Is if you're trying to figure out what Americans feel like, first of all, get rid of the idea of Americans. Number one, and number two, stop looking at national polling data because we don't vote national in anything. We vote for our representatives, we vote for our senators, and then we vote within our states for things. And when you start looking more granularly at American opinion, you start to realize more why things are the way they are. You might think that like, well, 52% of Americans support the legalization of marijuana or prostitution or gun control or whatever. But when you look state by state, you're like, okay, hold on, this breaks down way differently depending on where you're looking at things.
But that's changing.
But we're trying to force.
Is happening.
It might be, but the problem is we're trying to force our national views on everything, where we still have a system, whether we like it or even acknowledge it, that still very much works on the local level. I think BLM and policing is a really good example. We tried to come together as a country and make strong statements on policing, but policing is decided by your mayor. These are your most local elections. Obama's not going to fucking save you from a bad cop. Trump's not going to do shit about an unfair prosecution. But we all are looking and obsessing at that national level, and then nobody looks at their local communities. And now we're like, well, I feel like we don't get along like we ever did before. It's like, I don't know if anybody from New York City in the year 1892 would have gotten along with somebody from, you know, some rural place, some rancher in Texas, but it felt like they did because they never talked to each other. They never had the opportunity to be exposed to each other.
Let me try to bring some of these things together because you're bringing up some very important topics. So America has never been a coherent nation, and it's never been a nation state at all. It has always been an empire in some degree or another.
Sure.
So there's actually a thinker who's out of favor now who I think is a genius, Frederick Jackson Turner, with this notion of the frontier. So in European languages, if you're, let's say, a Prussian, and you have the word frontier, that means border. That means you've got to face off against the Russian Empire, France, some naval invasion, all that kind of stuff. In America, frontier means the opposite. It means endless open space, which we had. you can just go out there and make a new world, and if you can survive, you're it. And we actually went downward in terms of civilization. So in Boston, you're riding trolley cars and reading the Gospels, and you start to go out into the wilderness and you're rowing a canoe and reading the Old Testament. So we've almost like gone backwards as you go out into the frontier. So and you can see this despite progressives who kind of FDR as well kind of nationalized many things, made us more of a European coherent nation. That's not who we are. We do have a kind of outmoded political system on some level. It's at very least not a political system conducive to a nation state.
Sure.
It will never be Finland.
A coherent, singular identity. Yeah.
Right.
But that's kind of what I wonder when we talk about like.
That, but and the irony of it is that we are being nationalized. I agree. A guy in Maine or a guy in Wyoming who are both kind of right-wing types. They both hate AOC and think she's going to go take their guns or whatever. So it's like we're going through all of these forces, and I think there's also the contradiction between the ability to deal with domestic issues and then America's identity as a global empire. Like since 1944 at the very least, and probably before that, we've set the terms for the world. The world cannot function without us and the dollar. And I'm not just saying this as some wild
or
American
would function in a very different
jingoist.
way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it would be horrible if this thing went down. All of these Ron Paul types or tankies or liberals saying, like in the American empire or whatever, they don't know what that will actually entail and a lot of horrors that would entail. So America's always been this frontier in this sense of expansion and globalism. It is what we are. And so there's that contradiction between like domestic affairs and our obligations as imperialists. You hear this with Pauli of, we need a party about East Palestine and not a party about the globalist in Ukraine or something. Well, actually, as an American,
we need both.
Obviously you need both, yeah, to some degree. But as an American, you actually do need to think about Ukrainians, and not just out of sympathy, which I definitely have, but out of the fact that you have an imperial obligation to think about them. And I think it's like one of the kind of contradictions of populism is, in some ways Trump was an expression of the decline of America. Not necessarily through his actions, but through his rhetoric of like, come home, take care of ourselves, let's spend money on ourselves. Americans are dreamers. No more immigration. Build a wall. All of these things are kind of like on some level
shriveling of an
retreats.
insect, the dying of
And even Trump, when he was a better version of Trump in the 80s, when he was on Larry King or whatever, he was still kind of like that. This nationalism of kind of bringing things in. It might have something to do with the fact that he came from Manhattan. It's this kind of like pitched battle.
Maybe, but I mean, like, look at his investments. Like, the guy spends money and makes money like all over the world too, right? Like,
no question.
So,
yeah, no question. Russia. Yeah.
I think in terms of what you're talking about, the thing that I guess I'd like to appeal to, circling back to what I said before, is it feels like we're so divided today. But in 1950, like, how often was like a Jewish guy from New York debating a guy that lives in like fucking New Mexico?
Right.
It's never happening. So the division might have existed, but we didn't see it because those people weren't brought together. But now we've taken this version of the American experiment. We've got so many different people living in our country, which we've made work, and that's awesome. But now we're like bashing heads on everything. And I guess it feels so fucking lame because it feels like such a lip-cup thing to say. But I feel like at the end of the day, what we have to appeal to is America has only worked so far, and it will only continue to work if you can accept that some of the people living in your country are Nazis, and some of the people living in your country fucking hate white people and want them to die. And it sucks, but as long as they're not calling for either side to be killed, you have to accept that these people are all going to live here, and the country has to function.
The non-aggression principle is not enough. Like, I agree that that's reasonable, and that we could kind of get along and maybe even kind of laugh at each other. I think there's something to be said even for like friendliness that comes from like telling an anti-Italian joke with your Italian friend. Like, you're kind of making fun of them, but in a way you're kind of both being human in a way. So I get that, but it's not enough. There has to be an overarching meaning of what it means to be an American. America is an ideological nation, just like the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was able to coherently do that. They attracted the minds.
But they didn't.
But
That's why they fell apart, right?
Yeah. Right, but they lost it.
But I think because
and they collapsed immediately.
But
when
part
they
of the
lost
pursuit of that,
legitimacy.
part of the pursuit of that though was like the hardcore Russification of all of the little territories and states that they took over. And I think that's part of why it wasn't like the Soviet Union naturally grew out and expanded as it, expanded its empire and its ideology. A lot of it was literally like, half of you guys died from a famine. We're going to go ahead and ship 2 million Russians down to Ukraine. We're going to go ahead and take over all of your governments in Lithuania, Estonia. We're going to go ahead and do that. And so, of course, over time, like, the people there never felt like they truly had a buy into the Soviet Union. They were just kind of, like, subjugated by the Soviet Union. It's like, okay, well, we're here until the Soviet Union falls apart, and now we're fucking leaving immediately, which I think happened when the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union collapsed.
That's true to a great extent. There was also a kind of nation-building thing of creating nations that didn't exist, given the national codes. There's kind of countervailing forces. And obviously when they were invaded by the National Socialist Army, there was a call in the motherland and all that kind of stuff. Russian nationalism. Russians are kind of more equal than
and to your point, Russians still define themselves largely as we beat Nazis. And that's like their unifying calling card.
Yeah. It's that negative identity that you almost see against with Americans as well, where it's like liberalism can't assert anything. So it becomes this kind of donut or bagel with a hole in it. So you can't really define, like, this is what it means to be a man in America right now. This is what it really means. Don't give me the non-aggression principle or I'm tolerant or whatever. This is what it means that my life has meaning. America isn't offering that. It's this liberalism is this kind of donut where there's an empty center that it can't assert anything. And I think if anything, there's like Hitler in the center. Because you can define something of I'm not Hitler, basically, is like liberal morality. That sucks, and that will collapse. And I think the Soviet example is very interesting in this regard. You can't just define yourself on the basis of we beat the Nazis.
So what does the? So I still reject this. I hope I'm idealistic because I would hope that we can do something that doesn't require a common enemy. But like, if it had to be one, like what would it be?
Islam could play that role. I think
that won't work anymore, actually, because now all these fucking conservative simps. It's so goddamn funny because 4 years ago, I fought against so many conservatives who were like, I think that women are sluts and they shouldn't do this. I'm like, listen, bro. And I'd say this just to trigger the fucking. It kind of sounds like you're talking about Sharia law. I'm like, no, we don't mean that. We would never do that. Blah blah. But now you've got all these fucking Tate fans.
Together,
yeah, they're like, actually, Muslims are pretty fucking based. Women can't drive. They're not allowed to have a say politically sometimes. Like, they have to stay in the house. Like, I don't know. Maybe Tate was right when he converted. I was like, what the fuck? You guys are like 5 years late to the show. So I don't even know if you could get conservatives on that one.
No, you can't now. I think Andrew Tate phenomenon is actually incredible because he's the biggest man slut on earth on one direction.
Gambling, haram shit.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
runs
a
casinos.
criminal in another direction. He is a Muslim on another direction and a masculinity icon. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. But so I don't think the Islam thing will work, although that was tried to some extent. I think Russia as a big bad enemy is a positive manifestation, and I think Putin could kind of serve that purpose. But there also has to be this assertion of who are we
in opposition to whoever we fight against. Right?
Yeah, it's in opposition, but it's also an assertion. It's not an argument, and it's not about tolerance, not about liberalism. It's an assertion of identity. Identity is not an argument. Identity is an assertion.
Sure.
And that is what we need.
Is there any common ground that really stands out to you in terms of Americans, like stuff that we really can agree on? Because it is hard to find almost anything.
Yeah.
I don't think so, actually. And this is always my biggest argument against Fuentes, because and anytime I would debate somebody on the very far right, I'd say, we need to defend our Eurocentric, whatever American identity. It's like, give me some common values between, like, the gayest dude in San Francisco and, like, a fucking farmer in rural Texas. And, like, you just can't. And the reality is, like, I can point to countries around the world where conservatives are going to be way more aligned with, like, Saudi Arabian values versus, like, the Rainbow Road and fucking Seattle people's values or whatever. And the reality is that, like, yeah, it's really hard to find a unifying identity in the United States. And again, it's the gayest thing I've ever said, but like I really do think it is all of the different opinions that we have here that still function under one system that makes us like truly unique as a country. But I mean, maybe it's not enough. I don't know. Like, do you ever play PlayStation or Xbox or whatever? This fucking drove me crazy as a kid. You could never just play one or the other, you had to fucking hate the other group too. You ever notice that? It's like, oh yeah, I play PlayStation. It's like,
Super
true.
Nintendo and
Fuck
Genesis
Halo.
for me, but yeah.
Oh sure, yeah.
Mortal
Everybody
Kombat
always,
2 didn't have blood on the Super Nintendo, but it did on Genesis. So we were looking. I was a Super Nintendo guy too, and this was just an example where clearly I had to get a fucking Game Genie if I wanted the blood to be the right color.
Yeah, because otherwise it'd be green.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I was deeply offended.
But yeah, it feels like every time when you're in a fucking group, it's like, why can't you just fucking like yourselves? It happens a lot with the CRT and the anti-black stuff, where it's like, fuck white people. It's like, bro, why can't you just be happy for yourselves? Like, do you really have to? Or for white people and hating black people?
It's because we're animals. I don't. We're mammals, and that's why we do that. I mean, that's like the simplest answer. But I'm not saying that we should do this like merely on tribalism or like, you know, I hate my neighbors because they're, you know, they root for a different football team or whatever. What I'm arguing for is there does need to be a bigger ideological assertion, and I think this might come in a way after we go through this period. I think Biden, you know, he's managing things. It's just fine, but I think we're all kind of aware that we're kind of at the end of something.
Maybe.
And you know, what's going to come after that? I think there are a lot of, there are going to be some competing visions for a world order. Obviously, communism was a competing vision for a world order. Fascism was a competing vision for a world order. Islam can do that. It can function in that way. It has in the past. And it can create some discipline in society.
I feel like something that sucks today, and maybe it was an artifact, or maybe it happened in the history too, I don't know. But it feels like everything today is so politicized that it's really, really, really hard that we can't take credit for sick shit that we do anymore. Like in '69, landing on the moon was really fucking cool. That must have been a really cool day to be an American when you're sitting down and you're watching TV and we fucking landed on the moon. That's awesome shit. But nowadays, it feels like every American invention is immediately claimed or castigated based on your political rivalry. So, for instance, I might trigger you. I don't know where you guys stand on this. I personally think that the vaccination was like a fucking model success of fucking capitalism. That U.S. companies, through innovation and working with other companies around the fucking world, BioNTech in Germany, manufacturing in fucking Switzerland, we found a way to create an insanely sophisticated vaccine in like 8 months.
It should have been like landing on the moon, right? It
that's so cool. And it
like
happened. Yeah, and Trump obviously wants credit for it. But like, no, that's political shit. Or, I'll give the flip side, so I know a lot of right-leaning people are triggered right now. I personally, and I fucking hate the guy because I think politically he's the most cringy fucking dude in the world, but Elon Musk with electric cars and rockets are cool. That's fucking awesome. The first time you saw one of those fucking SpaceX rockets come back and land on the fucking planet, that was the sickest shit in the world. And same thing with electric vehicles. I mean, we probably would have gotten there eventually, but no doubt, I don't even like Teslas that much because the build quality is iffy, but he did something really fucking cool with Teslas. There's charging stations all over the United States. Electric cars are being taken seriously. The car company is worth more than like every fucking car company on the planet, but we can't give credit. And these are American inventions. SpaceX and Tesla and the vaccine, these are American things, but it's all like held politically hostage now. So you said before we have to have like we have to have domestic and international, but it feels like the international facing version is like, it's like two parents disciplining a child. Mom and dad can't provide a unified front when they're fighting with each other constantly.
Right.
And in the United States, when both sides are trying to tear each other the fuck apart, like how the fuck can we even present some kind of unified front to the rest of the world? You know, now with Biden, we're talking about how we want to help Ukraine, we want to save them, we want to provide a strong American vision. And before under Trump, we were like, we want to disband NATO and fuck the rest of the world.
Right.
And you've got people like Angela Merkel and the Australian Prime Minister and the Mexican president saying like, well, we can't rely on America for shit anymore. And yeah, we're like schizophrenic in terms of domestic ideas. We hate each other so much that even when we accomplish good shit, we can't take credit for it. And it makes it impossible to provide like a unified vision of what America is and stands for to the rest of the world.
I agree. Yes, but I basically that's why I'm suggesting that we're kind of at the end of this era, because you do need to do that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we need to. Well, I think we need to do. I don't know if we're at the end of an era. We always find a way to keep going on, but
right.
A few publications were predicting like a vibe switch coming soon, and I think that was probably largely in terms of the arts or just people's overall disposition. But it does feel like the world as a whole is kind of growing tired of this sort of constant infighting and battling between both sides, and it does seem like there's got to be something on the other side of it, but nobody's really sure how that could possibly manifest itself at this point.
Because yeah,
I hope so.
Fucking political pundits, we feed into each other what the media does and what people want. Like, media wants to blame people for being stupid. People want to blame the media even though they keep watching it. Like, Yeah, there has to start to be, there needs to be conscious decisions. I think it has to come from media first. And when I say media, I include alternative media as well. So people like you and me, you have to make the conscious decision to start to bridge gaps, right? You can do partisan content for your entire life, but you are fucking evil and you're destroying the country when you do that. When you do hyper partisan content, you are saying that like, we are different from these people on a fundamental level. They're evil, we're good, and we're gonna fight that fight and advocate for a fucking national divorce or whatever some people are fighting for. It's like, no, fuck you. We're Americans. You need to be able to talk to the guy that either wears a hood or wears a black fucking hoodie and wants to kill cops or whatever. You have to be able to bring these people together and talk. And if you're not willing to do that, you are actively contributing to the destruction of the country, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And I think there is space for someone who can lean out of polarization, because right now the most successful politicians just lean into it so hard and it just becomes nasty and meaningless. And there is a space, but again, it's like kind of an empty space, because I don't know, Biden hasn't quite successfily done that, even though he generally tried.
I give him credit
maybe
for it,
just due to his age, basically. Is why it isn't successful, but also why he tried, because he can remember kind of back then.
Yeah, because he was a senator for like fucking 7,000 fucking years, right? And yeah, he's talked to and worked with.
He's also like, me and these segregationists, we used to get things done over in
They
Washington.
did.
We'd go to the old Ebbett Grill and have a liquid lunch, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so I mean, that's who he is. I think Trump at his best kind of tried that.
I wish he would. He talked about it. Dude, there were so many fucking people on the campaign trail where it's like, are you going to turn it on and be the businessman that I think you can be?
Right.
But
like, if you look at him most charitably, you could say he was kind of trying that, but he didn't. He leaned into it. He leaned into insane conspiracy cults at the end. I mean, it was a disaster. But there is a kind of space for something, and that's why I do think that we need to talk about these things religiously, like a vibe shift or something. It's almost like the polar the polar magnetism is going to switch or something. It switches every few thousand.
Really,
years.
vibe is like a new age word for spirituality.
Well,
I really think about it, right?
There is some kind of collective consciousness and a collective mood, and I don't think I'm being like woo woo in saying that, in the sense of what is the kind of music that defines a period where you just hear it and you know where it is. Like if you think about the 80s and like synth pop or Madonna or Just Can't Get Enough and all that kind of stuff, you're immediately kind of transported to that time. And at the same time, a kind of like the nihilism of punk, of like actively being out of tune and screaming and slamming your instruments, that also defined a particular era. And even if it wasn't the most popular music, it was the kind of it was the music that defined the vibe of that period. So I do think we act collectively in this way. I think that's a very real thing.
And it's interesting because like when I started doing hip hop podcasts, like 2016, so around the same time that you were kind of invigorated with politics and in a different level, and generally even within the hip hop community, almost everybody would agree that music at this point, hip hop is like incredibly bland, and that hip hop is ready for something new, something exciting, something that doesn't feel so stale. We just have no idea what it is. And I kind of feel like that's the general overall theme, because when I interviewed Nick Fuentes, I was ready to be on fucking Media Matters and ready to be torn apart for having a conversation with him, and nobody gave a fuck. And a few years ago, I would have been extremely worried about having a conversation with you. I'm quite sure nobody's going to give a fuck. It just feels like in a lot of ways.
Surely they'll give a fuck.
They'll give it some kind of fuck, but it's just not going to be anything.
I'm probably going to get more heat for this conversation than you will.
Well, don't you think rock is, I mean, again, I'm more of like a rock guy that, whatever, but like, don't you think it's dead in a way? Like,
oh yeah, guitar-driven music is at this bizarre state
it's
of
not
affairs,
just guitar-driven music. The problem, and I am an advocate for capitalism. I fucking love capitalism. I'm a big capitalist, jerk it off all day. I'll fight for my markets every day of the week. But holy shit, art being like subsumed by capitalism was a not good thing, right?
Well,
where
I
you have like
don't even blame capitalism for this. I think it's actually much deeper. And yeah, there's the commercialization or boy bands or whatever. I think that, but
because the issue is like rock bands and shit used to be like, I think was it Grohl from Nirvana or whatever. It used to, like, yeah, you get a bunch of kids, playing guitars. They suck shit in garages, and they suck shit over and over and over and over and over again until eventually they get on stage and they start doing cool shit.
Oh yeah.
But now you've got like an exec, and it's like, that 9-year-old girl is going to be a fucking star. Let's take her and fucking mold her, and we're going to make all these singers. We're going to make this like overproduced rap and hip hop and everything, and all of it is so different.
Well, I look at
than where
somebody
it
like
used to
Billie
be.
Eilish, who is, you know, made a ton of amazing music, but it's like somebody like her, it would have been nice to be able to see her have some sort of young adulthood, going to clubs and shows and experiencing live music, and instead she has this seed of potential, and the labels just sink their teeth into her and turn her into a superstar, and she's never able to have any kind of like real life prior to that.
I think I agree with everything you just said, but I actually think it's deeper than that. So I mean, if you remember, I mean, I'm how old are you?
39.
39. Okay, so we're closer in age. And do you remember like release of Nirvana and Nevermind album?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little young, but I remember how exciting it was. Yeah,
it was super exciting. Everyone was talking about it. Your parents were talking about it. The teachers were worried about it. And it defined a particular moment in American history. And again, Kurt Cobain, is he a good musician? No. But there was something about him that he just like tapped into a zeitgeist. You know, I'm speaking generalities, but you know it's true. I don't think we have that. Now everything is completely fragmented. I think U2 served that purpose. Achtung Baby which was recorded in Berlin while the wall was coming down. It was like they had just plugged into history at that point.
It's hard because, but there are still there are things that we get.
Let me finish real quick.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Now we're fragmenting, and there's a lot of cool stuff. Like someone who's talented can go on SoundCloud and just produce with their synthesizer computer something really great. And I love this. I support this. But it doesn't speak to us as a population. It doesn't define a moment. And all of the genres that people like are nostalgic. So, I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who's in his early 20s, and he was saying, oh, yeah, hipster girls that he dates or whatever, they're listening to Nirvana in 2023.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's like, that's cool, I guess, but you're not getting it. Like, you don't understand what 1991 was. And the kind of declinism that was actually kind of setting in, the confusion about the end of the Cold War, you know, the pro campaign was coming up. We had done pop music to its limit. We needed to just shove it in reverse and do just grunge, you know, punk kind of stuff. And we don't have a collective body in that sense.
Or is it bad because we're too collective, though? Because that's what I wonder, too, and that, like, it's just because it's so national and international. I remember my mom and dad used to be in the Air Force, and they would tell me that they went to they served over in Okinawa, the base we had in Japan, and they would tell me that when they would go to these countries, as soon as you stepped off base, you're in, like, a whole other world. It's like the cultural customs are different, the sounds are different, the people everything's different. I've traveled, I don't want to say the whole world, but I'm into a lot of different countries now, and everywhere I go, bro, I remember in fucking, I remember this happened on 2 occasions. It happened in Poland and it happened in Taiwan, where I heard people driving up and down the street playing, you remember Gangnam Style?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's kind of funny. A really popular fucking South Korean song is like, I heard it all the time in the US. And all of the culture that we export is now everybody's kind of like on the same page. And I wonder sometimes, like, does that hurt?
And it's ironic, and you know, the lack of sincerity to Gangnam Style or whatever that was. That was kind of, I mean, surely that was ironic on some level.
Oh yeah,
you know, that whole thing. I mean, and so it's this like irony and nostalgia and just these like layers of distance between something sincere. Whatever you want to say about Nirvana, that was sincere music.
Sure.
You know,
but then also I will say too that it's hard to say, like, how much stuff do we have today that we wouldn't have in our current environment too. So for instance, like Kendrick Lamar, it's a really good rapper, really great writing. Like would he have been able to exist when we only had like, you know, like gangster rap or like West Coast, East Coast stuff with that kind of writing and that kind of person, or like Tyler the Creator, where you've got like some people that are like bi or like other kind of identities, like would they have been able to make it in those environments back then too? You would know better than I. Right?
Well, I mean, like when we talk about no longer having a monoculture, you're part of the problem, because the reason why you don't see albums doing the incredible album sales that you used to see 20 years ago or whatever is because you have large chunks of society who are watching fucking Destiny re-uploads. Not to mention like even just within hip hop, when they look at how bad album sales are these days, I'm like, well, there's all these hip hop based podcasts and Twitch streamers and creators, etc., who are out here making content, and I feel like the people on average are being trained to crave conversation more than music. And even a lot of the most like ordinary normie ass hip-hop consumers that I know have essentially stopped listening to rap, like probably 90% as much as they used to, because now they're consumed by the resulting conversation around the culture.
which I think plays into my earlier argument about like the information overload. Like back then, I remember back when I was a kid, little younger than you guys. I'm 34, but like new albums being released by certain people. Dude, when there was when Meteora came out from fucking Linkin Park, bro, and the whole ritual behind like going to the store, buying the CD, and you can't listen to it there. You got to fucking drive home. You got to pop it in your CD player, and you can't skip for it. You just have to sit there and you got to listen to it from start to finish. When Kid A came out, Radiohead albums came out, like these were monumental things. And now it's like you're inundated with media and cool shit from everybody everywhere. And I guess it feels a little bit less special. It's harder to like take it for like when a new Final Fantasy came out, it was like a really big deal in the video game world. And now there's like AAA titles being released like every month, every 2 weeks, and it's like, whatever.
Can this type of society be managed? Because again, like even I'm in my mid-40s. I can remember when the big three networks were still a thing. Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, Peter Jennings. They were kind of father figures. They could kind of define the general mainstream opinion of things. I can't name the nightly news broadcasters.
Anderson Cooper. No, I know what you mean.
You know what? I could name him, of course, but yeah.
I don't even know if he's a night broadcaster. I think he just has a show, but I know what you mean.
Even Anderson Cooper is kind of ironic, and he's almost the Seth Meyers equivalent in a way.
Yeah.
So we don't have that stability. There was a way to manage a technological society through these big structures like this, like the music industry. Hollywood inflected our dreams. It taught us what our fantasies were. It gave us myths and so on. Now, maybe those are bad myths. We could talk about that, but it was something that was unifying. And it's now we're in this world of just total fragmentation where it's like I signed up for TikTok just for a little bit. I deleted the app. But
good for you.
You were being spied on?
What?
The CCP was watching you?
They knew who I was. I could go into this. They figured out exactly who I was almost immediately, and they were serving me like MILFs wearing cowboy boots and Texas hats. So they kind of knew where I was from. And then they started serving me even weirder shit. But they got into my brain almost immediately. I didn't subscribe to a single person, and they pegged me. It was scary. Wow. Yeah.
TikTok those algorithms are on every social. It's so funny because people always like bring back the feed where we can just see things chronologically. That's what we want. It's like that's not what you want. No, these algorithms plug into your fucking brain
and
like
now on
crazy.
Twitter you have the two feeds side by side, and you get to see just how boring the chronological order.
Everybody always says bring it back. Nobody wants that, bro. These companies, like I know guys that work. You don't want chronological feeds. You want them,
but it's something
content.
different. So, but previously it was like Hollywood, CBS, etc. They gave you a message, and it was a kind of top-down system, and you can manage society this way. I think the algorithm is doing something different, and I'm not sure I even quite have the words to describe what's happening, because it's getting into your head. It's like finding out the fantasies you wouldn't even admit to, because it could tell how long you look at the video. Yeah. I don't know if it's
even
tracking
for like on
movement.
YouTube. I don't know if you guys have figured this out yet. Subscribers don't actually matter that much anymore. Like how many subs a channel has,
right?
Because most people's content that they watch is just on their suggested page,
right?
And whether or not you're subscribed to somebody doesn't even necessarily guarantee that a video is put there,
right?
It's dude, I remember back in 2008, 2010, like the way to game shit was to like hide keywords and like the header of like your HTML for like the web page and shit. Everything is so sophisticated these days in terms of how stuff figures out, and there's so much.
Right.
There's so much content. Like if you wanted to watch a fucking podcast, like you can follow like maybe 3 or 4 or whatever, but like there's like 1 million hours of every fucking show that's released all the time, and it's harder to find those monumental releases that everybody used to look forward to. The new fucking Radiohead album, the new fucking Kurt Cobain, the new fucking Pink Floyd or whatever, going back further, the new Beatles shit. Because there's just so much shit.
And that's why when it comes time to elect the president, it feels kind of ridiculous. It's like, oh, so we're all supposed to agree on 1 or 2 people at this point?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, Jews.
Right. But this is a huge problem. I think also with the algorithm, there's that question of, is it figuring out your fantasy, or is it kind of incepting something?
Telling you.
Yeah, because I was actually joking with this friend of mine, because we were talking about this exact subject, and I was joking. I was like, why is it giving me all these advertisements for gay cruises? You know, it wasn't actually, but you know, yeah. But there's that, it's figuring out some inner fantasy, but there's also that notion of it's incepting something into you.
Possibly,
and so it's giving you the fantasy, and that's something that Hollywood was really able to do. It certainly did it for me with all these, Indiana Jones and E.T. and all that kind of stuff that I still love. I mean, it was able to kind of give you new ways to dream, and I'm wondering, like this algorithm, it's doing it very differently. You don't go sit down for 2 hours in a movie theater that's collective with your parents, maybe, or a date. You're just scrolling.
Yeah, because everything is so overwhelming. Like,
yeah.
It's really hard for a lot of fucking Zoom. Bro, I had a girl that I was talking to. It's a 23-year-old girl, and she asked me the question, or I think I asked her about like, oh, like, is there? I think it was something like, what kind of movies do you like, whatever. And she's like, oh, like, I really like the Prestige. Have you ever seen that movie or like the clips? And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Have I seen the clips? I was like, what the fuck do you mean when you say have I seen clips of the movie? You're either asking me if I've seen the movie or not. And like for a lot of Zoomers, for a lot of people like 22, it's hard to even get them to sit down and watch a full movie, let alone like without your cell phone. Like,
she's kind of adapting that from us though too, because anytime you watch a debate or a Twitch conversation or whatever, there'll be a conversation about some piece of content, and somebody will say, "I've seen a couple clips. I didn't watch the whole 3-hour thing or whatever." So she thinks that it's normal to say that.
Yeah,
about
to see
a full
clips
length
of
film,
shit.
I
which
know
is
what they're going to
hilarious.
clip out of what I just said.
Sure, yeah. Which is part of what I like about my channel, because I still have like the full 2 or 3 hour videos rather than like. But yeah, I mean, now I've gotten into the TikTok game and YouTube Shorts and like cutting up short.
Yeah,
stuff
well, it's
and
kind of a
everything.
weird feeling even doing podcasts these days, because you kind of know that they're going to get more views on TikTok than they ever are on a platform where you're actually being paid for it.
Although to be fair, that those views mean less. I'd rather have 150,000 views on a YouTube video than 1 million views on a TikTok clip, because I know that the type of engagement, I mean, one, you get paid more for it, but like the type of engagement is a much bigger buy-in from those 150,000 people versus the TikTok people that just like scroll, you know?
Very true. And it's supposed to be good for your amplification and everything, but a lot of times you wonder.
Yeah. Hopefully you like if I get like 10 million views on a TikTok video, I hope I've driven at least like, I guess like 50 or 60 people more to like my long form content.
I can see it sometimes where there's a clip where a girl said that she wanted to get shit on, and that was many years ago, and every once in a while it'll pop up on TikTok and get 10 million views, and then I'll go back and look at the original VOD and people manage to find it, and like 10 million views will equal out to like an extra 50 to 100,000 on the actual YouTube video.
Or you see like big TikTokers will have like 1, 2, 3 million followers, and then they'll try to stream and they get like 50 viewers.
Yeah,
because the conversion
streaming
is, like, so crazy,
a much more dedicated connection.
Yeah, there's no story, there's no narrative, and I think that's a very interesting change in culture, where you're looking at maybe a clip of a movie or something like that, or you're looking at just some like weird, kind of thing where like a girl will just do something kind of silly in her apartment and or do a voiceover or all this kind of. There's no narrative. We've lost, and again, as like humans, and maybe even kind of deeper with animals, but certainly as humans, that's how we communicate through narrative. That's how we understand the world. That's how we even understand things scientifically. Is a kind of story that you can tell, and we're getting that ripped away from us. And I don't even know what the implications of this are going to be for the human experience, but they're going to be huge.
It feels like this is the worst comparison I've ever made in a serious conversation in my life. But do you guys watch Marvel movies?
No.
I've seen some.
I've heard about them.
There was there were all these Marvel movies that were building up all these heroes and characters to these like 2 grand, huge movies. It was Avengers Endgame, or it was Infinity War and Endgame, and I think these are like some of the biggest superhero movies like of all fucking time.
Sure.
But at the end of Endgame, you had like the completion of like I think like almost 7 different character arcs, and Marvel has been trying really hard releasing new superheroes movies. They call it like Phase 3, Phase 4, to figure out like their personality or their stories or their arcs afterwards. But after the ending of that one huge conclusion to a lot of the superheroes, the death of some, the finishing of others, like people like don't care anymore, and it's just like random superheroes that they don't care about in movies that are like meh. They're not like horrible, but they're just like meh. And it feels like a bit of an analogy too, but neither of you understand it, so I'm just talking to myself. But, yeah.
No, I
feels like to an analogy to like America, where it's like, yeah, we beat communism, we won the Cold War, we landed on the fucking moon, we beat Hitler, and now we're fighting against or for trans kids, I guess, is like what the whole conversation nationally, like, what was it fucking, like I just saw Matt Walsh like went to fucking Mississippi and he's like, today I stand in proud honoree talking about this new anti-transing the kids bill, and I'm like, is this really all conservatives have to talk about today?
Okay.
Like, what the fuck?
When you look at somebody like Matt Walsh, and it feels like in some ways he's doing like an updated version of what you were doing in 2016, right? Like what's the feeling in your stomach when you see what he's putting out there to the world?
I feel that I need to do something radically different, because the fact is I agree that the vibe of the alt-right has been totally absorbed into conservative ink. And I think that's one of the kind of, in a way, kind of misunderstood things. I think also mainstream people are in a way much more radical than marginal people, which is another, I think J6 was kind of emblematic about that. It was this normies getting together, and next thing you know, they're like overturning the government.
We're trying to,
I mean, pretty remarkable stuff. But yeah, there's no doubt that the Matt Walsh, he's not going to touch on race or race realism or the Jewish question or whatever. He's not going to do that exactly. Although someone like Crowder kind of does. This kind of
Crowder, I think, has positioned himself as like, I think he's trying, because Trump and Trump company is falling apart, or has been since the last kind of like middle elections. Oh my God, midterms. And there's like, the Daily Wire is poised as like that center right. We want to be the voice of the mainstream modern day Republican. And I think Crowder is like, well, there's a lot of populists and shit that are from the Trump camp that you guys are ignoring. And I think Crowder wants to be the guy there to absorb all of those types of people. So he's going to sit a bit far. So Shapiro won't even touch the Jewish question, obviously, because he's fucking Jewish and he's Ben Shapiro.
Well, he'll touch the Jewish question, but in his own
very,
way,
very barely. But Crowder will definitely, Crowder's never going to come out and be like, you know, Jews are, Crowder's never going to come out and be like, Jews are controlling media. But he'll be like, there are a lot of Jews that are in positions.
He basically said that.
Yeah,
he's
he'll
like, a lot
dance
of people
around
with
it.
Jewish names in Hollywood. I don't know.
But he's not even going to go as far right as like Fuentes is today.
No, he's not going to do Fuentes. But I guess my general point is that situationally, the alt-right was in complete opposition to the conservative movement in 2016. That was the entire cuck thing. That was not about liberals. That was 100% about conservative cucks.
Yeah.
You know, you're losers, you're fat,
I mean, where did
boring.
Groypers came from? Like, what, bullying Charlie Kirk and shit, right? Like, that's where a lot of the American First Movement came from, was fighting, like, establishment conservatives.
True, but even that was more like, you know, why don't you fulfill your own values? That was actually even more, the alt-right was really anti-conservative. And the best opposition is the one you can control. And the degree to which the conservative movement and the Republican Party has adopted the memes, I mean, on the floor of Congress, Ernst from Iowa held up a meme on the floor with like the gamer blonde Chad, you know, meme. Like they do this, and they're able to absorb the alt-right energy, and it's very successful for them because they need that kind of radical, angsty, outrageous, even up to the point of gas chamber memes or something. They've been able to attach that. Trump did it, but he did it in opposition to the Republican establishment.
Yeah,
so
it's harder to kind of take on, because I think Trump was really good for recruiting young people and recruiting like fiery, like zeal for people into the Republican Party. But he did it in opposition to the Republican establishment. So when Trump leaves, I don't know if a lot of that zeal kind of like disappears.
So
when they're trying to, but
yeah, I mean, like the Claremont Institute is very interesting in this regard. And I don't want to get too technical, but I think they have attempted to create an alt-right almost from central casting. So they found all these people who are lesser figures, basically, and they're kind of fitting them into pegs of the alt-right.
Yeah, it was hard though when Trump, like my parents were ride or die Republicans their entire fucking lives. I grew up hardcore Republican. My mom is Cuban, so very, very ride or die Republicans.
Yeah.
And my parents today, if Trump were to run independent, they would vote for Trump in a heartbeat over any Republican. And I think there's still a lot of Trump fans. I would guess like 30 to 40% of Trump's like loyal people, like people that voted for Trump, would probably still vote for him independently.
He could screw over
absolutely
everything.
Because you'd only have to really take what, like 4% of Republicans to destroy the
more than 4.
And he'll absolutely take more than that. Yeah. It would be over.
It would. But what's interesting, to go back to what I was saying, I think even the DeSantis campaign, I've seen these murmurings of them trying to bring in these influencer types, Pedro Gonzalez, Jack Murphy, all these kind of weird figures. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, they're lesser lights. But they're trying to kind of recreate that for a new thing, almost like almost in a lab. They're doing an experiment to reproduce it. I think a lot of Elon's purchasing of Twitter has been about that. I mean, Elon has been promoting some pretty. I mean, he's replying
he's
with
fucking
emojis
insane.
to cat turd.
I remember one of his first stories after he bought it.
You...
He fucking retweeted that fucking story about Pelosi's husband got attacked by his gay lover or whatever. It's like, bro, what the fuck are you even saying
He eventually
right now?
deleted it and didn't offer any explanation or anything.
Oh my god.
He's retweeting Medvedev, who's playing his own game in the Kremlin. He's trying to be the badass, talking about America's going to collapse in the next year. We'll nuke the world if we feel like we're losing. And Elon's like retweeting this, like, whoa, interesting. I've got to look into this. Like emoji face.
Yeah.
You know,
I might be missing something, but I haven't seen that many conservatives lining up to defend Scott Adams after his most recent statements. But Elon responded and said the media is racist,
right?
And pretty much completely took his side, which I don't think anybody expected him to weigh in such a way.
Fucking wild. I don't know. That guy's.
Well, okay, let's throw Scott Adams out there. He's just recently had Dilbert removed from hundreds of newspapers because of his statements about black people hating white people and how white people should react by, completely separating themselves and not trying to help black people at all. What's going through your head when you see that story playing out?
Well, he's a bit of a dweeb, and I'm not a fan of Dilbert or Scott Adams. But I'll say this because I have some conflicting feelings about this. The way he defined black identity as a hate group is contemptible and just weird and wrong. That was a very strange poll of "it's okay to be white," which is a 4chan meme, as you know, is meant to provoke people.
And you can understand why black people would be a little offended by a question that they kind of take as insulting and stupid in the first place.
Right. But I think there's another element to it as well, because I mean, white people have been for a many decades now moving to the suburbs, going to a Christian school for the good schools and things like that. I mean, we have segregated in many ways. Now, obviously, Los Angeles maybe is different, of course.
Not that different.
No, it's segregated maybe on a local level. And I've lived in New York City for for a while. I definitely get it. You could go to places where you walk across a street and
you'll still see fucking progressives will get on Twitter and be like, I don't know why you guys are so mean towards homeless people. And it's like, okay, because you've never fucking had a homeless guy screaming at you from right fucking behind you. Yeah, that drives you crazy. They're very much segregated themselves sometimes.
Montana has 2 congressmen now, so we have the same amount of congressmen and senators. Because people are moving in. There's like a big sort going on of a lot of, I guess, red state people from California and Texas moving to Montana. It's just like one example. So segregation is happening, and yet he's kind of like talking about something that maybe shouldn't be talked about and articulating white identity in the worst possible way, which is that blacks want to go kill you or something because of a Pew Research poll. So it's kind of weird. I don't have any sympathy for Scott Adams. I
also think, going back to what I said earlier about our brains are bad at parsing information, you got to figure this out too. And I say the same thing for BLM or for racist white people. Like, if blacks wanted to kill white people, you'd be seeing a lot of it. It wouldn't just be like 1 or 2 stories get fucking huge of like the black kid attacking the teacher for the fucking Nintendo Switch or whatever the fuck. I don't know. What makes it straight. Yeah, it wouldn't just be one. You'd be seeing this every single day. Same thing with like if cops really were out there just wanting to indiscriminately murder black people. It wouldn't be like one huge story, every couple months. You'd be seeing it daily, right? Because this is a 330 million person country. You see, there's a ton of people in this country. It's like over 500,000 cops. If there was crazy shit happen, you see it daily. But again, I think for humans, for our brains, it really only takes like 1 to 3 experiences to almost form an immovable stereotype. Like if you had 3 bad experiences with Chinese people in the course of a year or 2, you're gonna write off like 2 billion people, and that's just a superhuman thing to do.
He's not even like a teenager who got beat up by a black guy or so, which is kind of understandable that you would have be racist. He's like a social media dweeb.
He is, but like, damn, dude. Depending on where you're at on social media, I can understand why you think like fucking people want to murder white people or whatever. Because holy shit, there are some crazy social media bubbles out there. That's not this is right. That's fucking progressives saying crazy shit sometimes.
Oh well, that's true. Progressives will do it, but the dissident right is basically doom porn. I mean that is their identity. It is promoting videos of black high school students beating up a teacher, or a white girl who dated a black guy and is now like depicted with black eyes and a child.
I remember in the Trump shit, you remember there was that video when Trump was running? I think it was a video of like 6 black people beating up like was it a mentally handicapped white person?
Oh, God.
And
yeah.
people were like, this is going to happen to Trump people all over the country are going to start getting killed by black people. I was like, bro, what the fuck? Yeah.
But look, all of these things, there's some factual accuracy to those things, but it's like, what does it tell you psychologically that you're obsessed about it? I mean, have you ever heard the notion of like a man who's obsessed with his wife cheating on him? Even if he's correct, he's still pathological. So what I mean by that is like, if someone figured out that if you're obsessed with this notion, oh, she's looking at every guy, she's going around behind my back and so on, and then you figure out that it is true. Like 2 years ago, she had an affair, in a moment of weakness. Maybe your response to that would be like, well, okay, let's move forward. We can talk about it and so on. But with a pathological person, it can't be okay. He's got to remain obsessed with it. So the pathology of obsession is there regardless of facts.
We spoke about like J.K. Rowling, where it's like, I don't think she necessarily makes the worst statements sometimes about trans stuff. I could definitely see places where I disagree, but god damn, when you're that fucking obsessed with it, it feels like something else is going on, Jesus, yeah.
The evangelical preacher who's always talking about
gay people and shit, yeah.
You just know, it's not everyone, but you just know that
yeah,
he's probably
Jesus,
gay.
Gay, bad, we get it. We don't need to hear like the 37th fucking sermon on it, like Jesus.
Exactly.
Like, tell me you want to take it up the ass without saying you want to take it up the ass, like Jesus, dude.
Yeah. So it's like, what is the pathology of the right? And it's not just even the dissident right. I think it's actually a lot of the mainstream right does this exact kind of thing. What is it that you want to watch videos of your race being demeaned and their asses hit?
Almost like some like cuckoldry fetish of like, did you see the Libs of TikTok video yesterday where there was this blue-haired teacher talking to fucking kids about like fucking transing the children? It's like, bro,
why are you watching? I was talking to a friend who was saying like construction workers, when they'd have an hour off, they're looking at TikTok. And I'm like, what in the hell has gone wrong? I thought you guys would be, I don't know, like drinking beers or like shooting pool or something. What the fuck? You're looking at TikTok. And again, it's that like you dive into that world of Libs of TikTok and you think every public school teacher is a crazed lunatic child rapist or something. And it's just this weird, masochistic indulgence in that.
Or like the perfect example of this was that there was that Pew poll that was like, what percentage of Americans do you think are trans?
And people said
it was like 27% of like people, and they're like, bro, are you fucking wild? But then I don't even blame people for thinking about that, because it's like Leah Thomas, we're talking about her for like 3 weeks on the news. Republicans are so obsessed with trans people right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, Jesus, like the national conversation, you would think that like, yeah, half of America is like fucking transed out right now or something.
Yeah, it's
frustrating.
It's masochistic thoughts is the weird thing. Why are you so obsessed with it?
The thing, when we talk about all of this, and I reiterate this every time I have a debate where I feel like this wasn't productive, we didn't talk about anything worth talking about, the reason why I get so upset about some of these issues, or why I get upset about like Matt Walsh signing, or not signing a bill, but going and championing that bill in Mississippi about like not transing the kids, is because we have limited attention, and we have limited time to speak. And when you speak on some issues, you ignore other issues. So Matt Walsh going to talk about how he supported some bill in Mississippi to keep kids from getting trans. Like, Mississippi is ranked 50 out of 50 for infant mortality, and it's ranked 50 out of 50 for childhood poverty. If you care about fucking children, well, not fucking children, if you fucking care about children, let me rephrase that, you fucking care about children, why not speak to these issues? And I'm not saying that you can only talk about one thing at a time, but it's very clear that, like, we're very ideologically driven in the things we care about, and I feel like sometimes we dedicate so much of our attention to shit that, like, isn't that important. And damn, I would say so much of the way that I view life in American politics is, I hate to say this, because I never would have said this would have happened when I was 20, but now that I have a child who's 11 years old, it definitely changes the way that I view a lot of society. I'm like, man, there's so many things that would be cool that I could talk about in favor of enriching a child's life, especially if I wasn't rich, in terms of enriching a child's life. And I would just be so upset every conversation was about fucking trans teachers. Like, Jesus Christ, like my kid, like, and I get so sad, like I get emails and this shit, they're doing a donation drive for like $400 to buy shit for the classroom, and it's like, the fact that you even have to do that. I live in a wealthy school district. That's fucking insane that you don't have the money to do this. Like, holy shit. But we're just talking about like grooming teachers and teachers with weird fucking pronouns. There are so many more important conversations we should be having.
This gets to what I think has been a theme of this discussion, which is just we've lost this bigger channel of who we are and what we want to assert, and we're endlessly like drowning in fragmentation and nonsense. And yeah, it's where we are though.
Is there a part of you that has some respect for somebody like Matt Walsh or Chris Rufio, who's clearly, who's, I would say that if we take those two and we look at them in comparison to maybe like the career arcs that you and Milo went through in 2016, it's like they have seemed to be quite a bit more effective at pushing their ideas into the mainstream and making this a constant source of conversation, even if their overall disposition might be a little cynical.
Definitely. I mean, in the sense of Milo or Richard Spencer flaming out or, flying too close to the sun and burning, fair criticism. I would say, though, that Matt Walsh and Rufio have a tremendously greater support system than I did, in the sense that...
Because they're mainstream on their ideas. They're not pushing boundaries. Right, Matt Walsh and shit, right?
Right.
Because Milo and Spencer are living at the edges of like what is acceptable, and then oftentimes going beyond it.
Right.
But like Matt Walsh is like he's fucking employed by the fucking Daily Wire,
No
right?
doubt.
Like this is not a guy that's living on the edge of life. Like
Look,
he's
And
very
he was like
safe
a
and-
Daily Wire C-lister for a long time,
Sure.
too,
The
right?
fact that they were trying to pay Crowder like $30 million for a YouTube show, I mean, that is totally nuts.
To anyone who
That
had any
demonstrates
doubts about how valuable you could be within the conservative world, that was a moment where, for me, I'm like, oh, okay, so these guys are fucking killing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're talking about being canceled by everybody. And it's like,
Right. And
Crowder
you're
shooting
you're
down
better
like
than Crowder. I mean, not that that's a high bar. I mean, it's like they.
He took a shtick. He's going to the college campuses trying to have his mind changed.
Bro, that was a good idea. I copied that shit. It was a good video.
Yeah, but so there is a massive infrastructure that is going to support them. Rufio worked with creationism and young Earth stuff before. He's now gone into this kind of race-baity critical race theory. But there's a big infrastructure of conservatism behind them, and so that, I mean, I can grant them something in the sense that Matt Walsh is articulate, but that's about it.
If you were in charge of the books in your child's library, what would be the ones that you'd want to remove?
The Bible.
Jesus.
Wow. Didn't see that coming.
No, I say that. That was a bit of a joke. I mean, I am very critical of Abrahamic religion,
right.
But I do think, in a way, you need to read the Bible. I think most Christians haven't read the Bible. They know almost next to nothing about it. You need to read it and really understand it. So that was a joke. But which ones would I remove? I mean, it's a kind of non-issue, because it's like, okay, I don't want I have a son and daughter. I don't want them reading some of these just kind of weird shit, that Matt Walsh is complaining about. I agree, and they're not going to. But like, what am I seriously concerned about? Being that they're kind of pushing preteen, it's watching hardcore pornography on an iPad. That's endlessly more impactful on their psyche than
That is a good point.
Maybe you went to the library and saw a gay book where it's like cartoon characters. And so it's like, let's go after the real thing. That is a really serious issue. And again, in mid-40s, I can remember internet porn when it was first coming out, and like the page would load slowly, like it would take a few minutes. It was almost like a striptease in a kind of funny way.
Half the time it just wouldn't load. You just left waiting.
Right.
Or you didn't get the right video. Your real player opens and it's
video. What are you talking about?
I was on Kazaa, so we downloaded videos there, and instead of getting like a this 30 fucking minute porn video of some woman sucking a dick, it ends up being like the whole album of like Limp Bizkit, and it's like the clean version, and it's like fuck me, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Fuck that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this kind of stuff is so much more serious than just some library book that they're probably not going to. I mean, they're reading a book. That's probably like a good step forward to begin with.
I think,
but they're not really willing to do that. I mean, I think there's this anxiety about culture in general, and they try to solve this problem in kind of the dumbest way possible.
It can't be solved in schools. Have you ever? I hate to be this guy, but I'll always be this guy. Have you ever watched The Wire?
No.
Okay. I'm one of. Have you seen it?
I've never seen The Wire.
I'm one of those guys that watches The Wire and says it's the greatest show ever.
I watched it like a couple years ago, so it's still sort of fresh in my mind.
Yeah. So you remember? I think season 4 was about the schools, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. By the time the kid is at school, you're not fixing his problems. Like you're fucked at that point. Right. Especially, God, you've got these teachers making fucking $42,000 a year or whatever, or $38,000 a year, and they're tasked with what is arguably, or almost inarguably, the most important job in our country is educating our children. They're compensated like shit. They're put in positions, they're set up to fail a lot of the times, and they're tasked with like fixing problems and creating children who are already like fucked before they even get into the classroom because of how fucked the family life can be sometimes.
No doubt.
And the idea that like we're gonna write culture or do something from the classroom is like, bro, there's like so much other things outside of that.
Well, look, the grooming issue. I mean, I perhaps we don't want to talk about this, but I mean, the grooming issue. So much of this takes place at home.
Sure.
And it takes place in really terrible ways that it's not
Discord
about.
rooms.
It's not even about homosexuality. It's something kind of sicker. But it's like that's a real issue. I don't even know how to solve that problem, actually. The grooming that takes place in churches. That's a very serious issue.
Very
Don't
anti-religion.
hear Chris Rufio talk about that. You know, they want to put it on public school teachers or whatever. So again, it's just they're dealing with this anxiety and they're not solving the problem. I mean, I think the porn issue does have to be solved because we've never lived in a world like this where I can within 30 seconds I can have whatever fantasy or nightmare I could ever conceivably imagine just immediately accessible.
What would be a reasonable approach towards, stopping the spread of porn or whatever our society could actually?
I think it could come in hand in hand with legalizing prostitution. And so whenever you hear Christians talk about porn, they get it completely wrong. They basically say things like it inspires rapists, it makes people want to go out and have extramarital affairs. It does the exact opposite, in fact. It's a sex substitute. You watch porn because you're not having sex. If anything, it's going to reduce rape or extramarital affairs.
Studies show that it does reduce sexual assault. I don't know if it reduces the amount of sex, but when it comes to violent sexual assault in countries that legalize things like prostitution, those numbers tend to come down.
Right. And look, what is the big problem right now? When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was teenage pregnancy. They're having sex at school. Like, what are we going to do about it? What is the issue now?
Sexlessness,
loneliness.
Yeah. And those numbers for
no
teenage
friends
pregnancies and stuff
even.
have fallen,
Remember
like,
teen pregnancy?
Yeah, right. No one's
talk
remember,
about all the fucking time. Never
16
hear
and
about
pregnant?
Yeah.
Right, after school special stuff. That's not the issue now. So whether you can prove it or not, there's this major coincidence between ubiquity of porn and sexlessness. It's this grand irony that I don't think we've fully comprehended.
It's like we take these problems, we fix them, and we make like the newest ones in the funniest fucking way. I think the funniest thing now is I think we're gonna get to a point where vaping is more pervasive than fucking cigarette smoking was for teens.
I think
I'm addicted to nicotine lozenges. I'll admit
Oh
it.
shit, are you a vapor then?
I'm not a vapor. No,
Okay.
I've got one in right now.
Oh,
I need that little nicotine
Yeah.
kick. But I got addicted to an anti-smoke vape. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, because vaping was originally, or am I inventing this?
No, that's
vaping
true,
was
yeah.
originally like you can
Exactly.
wean off smoking, and now you can vape instead.
And if you look at the graph of like teenage cigarette use, it just absolutely
Plummeted.
plummets, and then the vaping just
takes
explodes.
up, and now you've got kids vaping that would have never smoked cigarettes,
Yeah.
but now they're vaping and doing tricks and
I
shit.
went
And that's like,
snowboarding the other day for the first time, and I'm waiting at the bottom of the hill for my girl because she fell about 18 fucking times coming down the hill, and I see countless people who hit the bottom of the hill and immediately take off their glove, reach into the pocket, and pull out the vape and just start puffing away on that shit.
that has to be some extended fucking metaphor for where we're at in the country today.
And it would be impractical for them to smoke a cigarette in that moment
Exactly,
too. So
yeah.
it's way easier to sort of segment it into their day.
Yeah. But this is what we have to think about. It's like the Christian response is kind of anti-sex and anti-life on some level. I mean, they're pro-life, more kids, proof will multiply. But part of being alive is sensuality. You know, part of being alive is lusting after things and chasing after girls and girls being excited by, boys, and that's who we are. We don't want to end this. So I think we do need a kind of pro-life approach, and that's why I think porn needs to be curtailed to a great extent, not because it makes you deviant or sexual, but because it replaces sexuality. Like there was an older porn star that I read, he was talking about it, and he was saying like, don't worry about me, like I'm just fine. Like I had sex with beautiful women, like it was cool. I worry about the people watching my videos all day who have no experience with another human being. And I've actually never visited a prostitute in my life, but it's a real experience. At least, you know, you're talking to a human being. You're engaging in life in an act. And so I think you kind of have to, like, one hand giveth and the other taketh away. Like, if we're going to try to, if we recognize that pornography is too ubiquitous, it's no longer erotic even, you know, if we recognize that problem, we have to give someone something. We have to say, we want you to have a better life. We're not just taking away your toys, you know? So I think, you know, curtailing pornography and legalizing prostitution would be a way to do that.
I'm just trying to imagine any sort of government official being like, okay, like, we're taking away the porn or making it harder to access porn, but we got all these great prostitutes for you guys, and I think in the end of the day, you're gonna appreciate us doing this.
I feel like I would fight. I don't know if
wasn't politically successful.
I feel like I don't know if prostitution is. I don't know if I agree that porn is a substitute for sex. I know there are a lot of people that masturbate to porn and don't have sex.
Right.
But I feel like it has more to do with the. I think we're just getting more segregated, and like I think that like. It could be porn, or could be playing like League of Legends, or they could be on TikTok, or they could be at home doing nothing. Like, and
well,
also
they're
I would
definitely
say,
not around other people, which
yeah,
is what we were doing
problem.
when we were young.
That's the issue, because like it used to be back in the day, and I would speak about this. I'm even
sex was only one of the only things to do.
That and social media existed as a way to augment your real life.
Yeah.
Right. Facebook was to check in at fucking parties and see what was going on. It was never a replacement for like real life hanging. Yeah, you would go to the fucking mall with all your loser fucking friends. You'd walk around, you'd talk to girls, and you'd go to house parties, and you'd see people. And regardless of what people think, when men and women are around each other, or boys and girls around each other for a long period of time, they're gonna start fucking. It always happens. It happens in coworker environments. It happens in schools. It happens in places where it's not supposed to happen, with babysitters and whatever. It happens everywhere. But if you're not around people, you're not fucking. Like, and it won't. If you're never around girls and you're a guy and you work a job with 90% male coworkers and you're out of school or whatever, you're not gonna fuck ever. You can take away all the porn in the world, and this guy's gonna sit at home playing video games. Like,
well, it's even better than the real thing. So it's
well,
you know,
I don't know if I'd say that.
No, it is though. Well, I'm referencing the song, of course, but what I'm saying is that it's even better than the real thing in the sense that it's replacing life as opposed to inspiring life. So there are many people. Many younger people are suffering from erectile dysfunction.
No shot. I don't believe that. No way.
Absolutely true. I'll show you data
Sure, okay.
afterward, but if you just take my point so we can continue the conversation. So. They're suffering from erectile dysfunction. They're suffering certainly from loneliness. It's because when they're with a real girl, you know, look, it's kind of all knees and elbows when you're. I mean, not for you, of course, but
no,
like,
we all have virginity stories in the back of our head. It's like extremely awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the default way for it to be. Yeah.
Right. It's not going to be what you see in a erotic film or a porn movie or whatever, and you kind of got to get used to that. If you can immediately access like bukkake gangbangs and just insane stuff, then that girl sitting next to you on the bed is just not so hot. The virtual reality is better than reality. That's like where we are.
It's even better than the real
thing.
I might just be wrong out of touch. I jerked off, bro. I was at fucking 10 years old on fucking Kazaa, like trying to find crazy fucking porn.
I literally had bukkake gangbang VHS tapes when I was 12 or 13 years old, and it didn't stop me from trying to get some pussy. I'm just saying. I'm not denying that it might have that effect on some people, especially because I was working with such a limited amount of porn that I got bored with it so quickly I had to keep going. Obviously, on Pornhub, you're not going to have that problem.
And I wonder if maybe, and I have to, because it's hard to know, like, are you an outlier in some area or not? But like, yeah, like the first like 4 years that I spent with like, because the first girl I did in my high school sweetheart, we were together for like 3 or 4 years, I think. Like, no amount of porn could have replaced like how much fun it was exploring with that sexually.
You're preaching to the choir, obviously. Like, I totally agree. I love women, but like you've got to look at these big, broad trends. Like that, we are not worried about teenage pregnancy. We are worried about people who are 35 and are virgins. We're worried about people not having friends. Even.
Yeah,
We're
but
not even talking about
I understand, but I think going back to my point,
that's the trend.
I think going back to my point though, again, and I feel like this is another thing that I brought up in the beginning, where I say it's fun to have an enemy like pornography, and then the other issue I feel like is more amorphous. I feel like our issue is that it is so fucking entertaining to be on our homes today. It's a lot to compete with.
Right.
If you want me to go outside, you've got to compete with my video games that I can play that I love. You've got to compete with Netflix. You've got to compete with so many things that I have in my house that are so fucking entertaining to me. And you want me to drive out to a restaurant, buy $15 cocktails, like blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's a matter of like porn versus pussy, or if it's just that like the screens have just gotten so captivating for us.
My office in the back house, like I have 4 screens set up, and the other day my power went out, and I felt like I had just been robbed of so much entertainment in that moment, because what I'm left with is either like, oh, I have to go grab one of these books on my bookshelf that I haven't touched in a while and literally light a fucking candle, or maybe I have like a handful of articles saved on my phone that I could get to load. And I mean, that's pretty dark.
And you go to a restaurant today, and I did this with my kids, so I'm just as fucking guilty of this. I'm not castigating, I'm not, you know, chastising parents for it. Like, you go into any restaurant today and you look at like every single kid at a table has a fucking iPad, and you'll get these kids that are like 3 years old, and bro, and I watched my son do this. Okay, this motherfucker can't even read. Okay, he's 4, he's basically retarded. And he'll take an iPad, okay, and he's like penetrates like 15 paywalls. He's like buying shit. I'm like, Nathan, how the fuck do you even know how to do this shit? You can't even fucking read the words, but he recognized the symbols. Like, oh my god, and that has to be like fucking wiring kids' brains in insane ways, such that like, and I'm so fucking happy because I'm a child of the internet and I grew up on that shit, but I was still very much in the real world because the internet didn't really exist until like 2007, right? Like, it didn't really exist until like the late 2000s. So I still had a lot of real life experience, and that real life experience is irreplaceable. No amount of video chat or whatever. It's why podcasts today are all like in person, because it's way different than doing it on fucking Zoom. But for a lot of young people, like, they don't even have that reference point, you know? Like, a lot of their socialization happens in Discord rooms, on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, and they don't even have the real life experience, that repertoire built up, such that when they do need to do it, they're like virgins to socializing. Right?
The sexlessness problem kind of reminds me when we talk about the obesity problem in America, in the sense that like 40% of Americans are overweight, and it's
it's got to be 40% are obese. I bet like 80% are overweight.
Okay, you might be right, obese, but like. And the real problem is that we've created our entire society in such a way that nobody has to walk, nobody has to do anything. The easiest food to get your hands on at any given time is terrible for you. And then when you look at a lot of European cities, they basically demand a lot of physical exercise to just be able to exist in there. Even when I lived in New York City, I was getting so much fucking exercise without trying. Working in this current life that I have, I will get no exercise throughout the day unless I go out of my way to work out. So we've created a society in which sex is cumbersome and doesn't really come about naturally, and to be a healthy, in shape person is going to take a very serious effort. It's
Herculean.
See, I was going to say that, but I never know if I should pronounce the U.
Herculean?
Herculean or
Herculean?
Is it Hercules or Heracles?
I just try to dance around it.
Achilles or Achilles. I don't know. There's like 15 different ways to pronounce it. But yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, because you're set up to fail.
Right.
You really are. And we look at kids, like it's funny because as a parent, or as a child, if you remember, like, your parents always tell you, like, you know, you are who you hang around, garbage in, garbage out. Like, you never, ever, ever would, like, your kid is like, hey, Dad, I'm gonna go hang out with, like, all these guys that, like, smoke weed and cigarettes and do this shit all day, but, like, trust me, like, I'll be like a good kid. I'm like, fuck no, you're not hanging out with those motherfuckers. You're gonna hang out with the kid that goes to Sunday school, because I know that if you hang out with these people long enough, you're gonna fucking turn into that, because that's reality. That doesn't stop when you turn 18. You stick a person who's 30 years old in an environment, like you said, where there is no exercise, there's no walking, we drive everywhere, and the best food available to you is ultra processed, ultra high in carbs, everything. Like, yeah, of course people are gonna get fat, and that's not even, you can't even blame them for it, really, because holy fuck, look at the world we live in, you know?
I agree, but being a parent, you do try to put your children in the best situation.
Yeah, you have to, because you know that's the only way they're going to succeed.
Right, totally. So shouldn't we do this for the population or the planet? You know, and that's why it's like a leader does need to think of himself as a parent, and you have to think of Americans as children on some level, and they are. And I feel like we don't, again, confront these issues of not is it liberal or is it legal or is it free or whatever, but what do we actually want? Like, let's talk about ends here. Do you actually want, 12-year-olds obsessed with pornography, playing video games all day, super fat? Or do you want to kind of, in a way, kind of force them to be free? To kind of say, you got to get outside, bro. You got to join a t-ball team. I'm sorry, it's mandatory now. Like, on some level, we need to start thinking like this, and Americans are just kind of allergic to this notion.
Because it's like an inherent contradiction, like in liberalism, where it's like, we really do want people to have the freedom to do whatever they want, but that probably needs to be constrained at least a little bit. Because
Right.
left to unlimited, and like there are some things that like, and you guys are old enough. I don't know if you guys ever went to Europe in 2010s and experienced this. Bro, when I went to Europe in 2012, when I was in Poland a lot, this happened. And then 2013 in Germany. When I'm over there and I'm outside and I smell cigarette smoke, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like sucked back into like being 11 years old at IHOP when you had smoking and non-smoking sections.
Yeah.
I don't know how we did it. I honestly, God, don't know what the fuck we did. But in the United States, we fucking wiped the fuck out of smoking. And I think that was a good thing, you know? I think it was a really I don't know if you were a smoker and you got offended by that, but like,
No.
I think it was good that we got rid of smoking. You don't smell smoke everywhere. You go into restaurants, there's not smoking sections.
But
like,
it would have been bad if we were sending, soldiers into people's homes to steal their Newport cards,
yeah,
right?
Sure. Yeah,
Maybe.
probably. No, I'd say probably. No, I'd say yes, that would be
But
bad.
they went about it in a way in which
Yeah.
people didn't feel like they were being coerced, and it took multiple generations, really, for
Exactly.
this to...
But we
and there's still a
managed to do
decent
it,
amount of
yeah.
people who smoke. You go to a bar on a Friday night, you're going to see a shitload of people smoking, and it's actually kind of weird to be like, oh, so this is an activity that's like almost exclusively for people who view themselves through the lens of being a potential smoker. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was somehow, but the first thing, the very most important thing is we identified that it was a problem, and we all agreed we kind of need to do something about it. But it's really hard to get people to recognize today that certain things are problems that we need to do something about. Going back to my example for
You can't
vaccines.
get them to take a vaccine. Oh,
yeah,
we
going
went
back to
the
my
same
examples
place.
of
Yeah.
vaccines and masks and everything, the United States, and this is one of the reasons why I was so angry about Trump kind of dragging his feet initially on the COVID stuff. When the United States puts its mind to something, I do see like flashes of like, this is the greatest country in the world. Fucking bar none. Because when we are unified on an issue, and regardless of how you feel about Ukraine, the way that we approached that was one of those things where we were unified on it. The United States had a mission and a goal, and we carried through, we followed through in a way like, holy fuck. When we put our minds to something in the United States, we can do amazing things. We're mailing out COVID tests to everybody, the vaccine shit, and a lot of people don't like the vaccine shit, the PPE that we eventually started to do when we finally took it seriously. If the United States is unified on something, we have so much potential good power that we can throw at a problem.
Yes.
We just can't fucking agree on what any of the fucking problems are anymore, you know? It's so frustrating. It's so much wasted potential.
I agree. And everything, as you were saying, I mean, everything becomes hyper polarized
Everything.
immediately, where, a mask wearing is like means you're a liberal.
Yeah.
Or something like
You're
that.
like a
It's
bot, you're an
really weird.
NPC. Or like, sending rockets to Mars is cool. Oh, you want to send a rocket to Mars because you don't care to fix the environment on Earth and you think we can escape to another planet? No, motherfucker, I think it's cool to land shit on Mars. Fuck you. Yeah, it's so frustrating.
As long as we're on the smoking topic, I just want to throw this out there, is that now in California, you can't buy Newports or you can't buy menthol cigarettes because black people like them too much and they are bad for people. So as a result, they have been essentially banned. And I know multiple people who are like getting cartons of Newports in the mail and shit. And I mean, on one hand, I guess, yeah, banning Newports is going to mean less dead black people, which is good. But at the same time, there is a big part of me that's like, well, if they want to fucking smoke them, who the hell are we to be telling them that they can't?
There's got to be a comic of like a dude, like two people are on the fucking sidewalk and one guy's got like a menthol and another dude's smoking like weed and the cop comes up and he busts a dude smoking a menthol cigarette. Like, holy, like some guy, like Demolition Man sucked from the 80s into today's world. They're like, bro, you're going to get in trouble for that. And the guy's on the fucking, weed. Like, yeah, this guy is maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, I
What
don't
a
know.
world, yeah.
Is it the government's job to save people from the stuff that
Themselves?
they actually
Themselves.
genuinely want
I
to
think
do?
it is.
It is.
Yeah,
It
it is. We need sugar taxes because, again, left to our own devices, people are fucking. Bro, like, even I'm fucking. If you put me in my house and I've got nothing to I'll fucking masturbate for 12 hours. I won't fucking do anything if I don't have a job, if I don't got a fucking stream, I don't have shit to do. I'll sit around and I'll jerk off all day and do nothing. And
I'd
it's
like
just
to
like,
see your analytics during that 12-hour period. Like, what's your heart rate like during that? I don't know if I can handle that.
it's probably not even high. It's like, oh,
Could you wear
9
the Whoop
o'clock,
band
like
so
another
we can kind
fucking.
of? I want to know what's going on in your body during that.
But like and it's funny because fuck, everybody knows this, and also simultaneously everything pretends like it's not true. I'll bully conservatives for a second. Conservatives will do this thing where it's like, fuck college, don't go to school, it's not important, blah blah blah. Also, fuck the elites. The elites are rigging the system, and it's like, what do the elites do with all of their fucking kids? They all send them to the best fucking schools. Do you think that Warren Buffett is sending his kids to like like a 2-year college to become an electrician or plumber? No, these guys are all going to Ivy League. What was the scandal like fucking 5 years ago where a whole bunch of white people were trying to rig these schools to get their kids into them? Because and what do successful people always say when you're successful? You know this. I'm sure we all know this at this point. Surround yourself with successful people, right? You never. What do you say to drug addicts when they get out of rehab? Stop hanging out with your druggy friends. We have to work to create a better environment because people will only succeed as much as their environment allows them to. except for some truly exceptional individuals. But those guys are exceptional because they are the exception. It's not the norm. If you put people in shitty environments, they're gonna be shitty people. It's not even their fault. So yeah, if the government can do fucking anything, it should be to kind of like gently massage and guide us in like a relatively positive direction. And if you want to jerk off or smoke a menthol every now and then, fine, but there should be a bit of friction there. Whether it's a fucking credit card for a porn site, or whether it's, you know, an extra $20 for a sin tax on cigarettes, but something to kind of like guide you in the right direction.
But just the taxes on the cigarettes clearly wasn't working because they decided to eliminate the
well,
flavors
the problem
out here and
taxes
stuff.
will work. They just got to be higher.
Yeah, they have $20 packs of cigarettes in New York City.
Damn.
I mean,
But they also have legal weed in New York City now too. So.
but you could get a pack of cigarettes for like $4 in a lot of the country, which is pretty unreal.
Yeah.
You know.
God, I remember my grandma used to buy cartons. You remember those? Did you
Yeah.
ever buy cartons?
Oh yeah.
I think it was like $20 for like a whole was like 10
Yeah,
or 12.
yeah. They were
whatever.
like $20 because I used to work at the grocery store and steal them and sell them at school.
I remember when my great-grandmother's, I heard about this, of course.
Can you
she
pull
was,
the mic in a little
Oh,
bit?
I'm sorry. She was quite fond of Coca-Cola. Something about it.
The Coke, the Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blood addiction.
Here's one thing I just wanted to throw out. Richard, how closely are you paying attention to the manosphere at all? And do you feel like the manosphere speaks to a lot of the societal ills that we've been discussing? What role does it play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is addressing something real and offering a very bad solution in general. And I think someone like Andrew Tate is just the full-on expression of this kind of thing. It's addressing the loneliness. I think it's also kind of, you know, it's funny because it's like no Chad ever trained to be a Chad. I mean, he might have gotten some avuncular advice here and there, but he just does, you know? You just